Duke, you suck.
You shut your mouth!
Welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. And now, Duke Durango.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Duke You Suck podcast. I'm extremely happy and proud to have local broadcasting legend, a guy that I've been watching on local television for what seems like an eternity. I almost don't remember a time when Rob Kerr was not on local sports television. Rob, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, man.
Well, hey, listen, first of all, Duke, in my opinion, you do not suck. There are a lot of things that do suck, but Duke does not. So, this is a pleasure and an honor. As I told you when we were kind of kibitzing back and forth, like this checks a box for me. This really does. It's, just really cool to be on a wrestling podcast. So thank you.
Well, and I'm really excited to have you here and to treat, you checked a box for me in that with the Battle of the Dome, I got to work in the Saddle Dome.
Yeah.
Even it was short-lived, and,
Yeah.
got embarrassed a little by young Stephen Crow, but at the same time, it's, it is what it is. And I got to work the Saddle Dome, and I appreciate you giving us that opportunity.
To me, it's, and I know we'll break it down and we can talk all about it, but it's really cool. I guess I never really kind of keyed in on that until the first time we did it. And the guys were talking about the fact that, and it's right. It was a WWE or has been a WWF WWE venue.
For sure.
Right. And then lo and behold, we just, we were looking for something different, something cool, something to honor our namesake. And yeah, it is neat. That's probably been one of the coolest parts about this is to be able to, it's kind of a transactional business sometimes, right?
Right.
Cash in, cash out, but to be able to share opportunities and experiences. And that's the world I live in, in my current role, with the Hitmen and the Roughnecks, really, it all comes down to experiences. So to be able to provide experiences for the wrestlers and the talent, that's pretty cool too.
Well, and yeah, man, I was like, now that I've started following you, of course, a lot of people use their platforms, in their position of, a celebrity or local celebrity. They'll use their platforms for a cause here and there, but man, as I've started following you on your social media, like you have a finger in everything. Like you are all over it.
You know what? Social media is an interesting animal to say the least. And, I was always one of those guys, Duke, that was just proud. Like I had the first CD play. Hell, we had one of the first VHS machines. I had one of the first small camcorders. I've always been a technology guy. I had the internet. When I was here in Calgary, my first go around in 1995, I was a CAD Vision. I had a CAD Vision account. We had one of the first internet accounts. So,
right.
And I remember honestly, for me to tie it back to wrestling, one of the first things I ever found on the internet was wrestling websites that were saying the Ultimate Warrior might be coming back. And my mind was blown. How do these people know? So I've been kind of always on the leading edge of technology until social media. I got on Twitter back in 2009 and it's passing me by. But the one thing I did learn, especially in my previous job, in media, when I was working radio, when I was working television, like, all eyes are on you. So you got to kind of pick and choose your battles. And I just chose that I was just going to use my platform for good and for fun. And yeah, you're right. I got my fingers in a lot of things. Most important to me is kids, and most important to me is kids' involvement in sport. And I've become a very passionate advocate for house league players and grassroots players, because I think the elite programs all have enough leaders and people 100%. Like that. I just think that the most important thing to do is make sure that kids have an opportunity to play. And
elite athletes are sexy charities.
What's that?
Elite athletes are sexy charities.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that's come along in my life has been the Superheroes program. That's that jersey over there. That we started 4 years ago to allow kids with cognitive disabilities and physical disabilities to actually play hockey. And so now you're right. My social media is all about what we do with the Hitmen and my plans there, what we do with the Roughnecks. And then, I'm a board member for Kids Sport Calgary and the Flames Sports Bank. I'm a board member for Sport Calgary. Right. So, to me, social media is all about, promoting the causes and things like that.
Yeah,
I've done the geez, this is the worst trade in the history. That coach needs to be fired. Why are they doing? I've done that. I'm cool.
Yeah, you've paid your dues.
The rest of that out.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to be, that must be a hard job. Like I've not listened. I used to tease my brother that they called it the fan 960 because he was the only one listening. And
we had a few more than that.
Yeah, no, you had
I can attest to that.
He just won a lot of contests, so it was more a testament to how much he listened more than than you had listeners. He's in a service van 8 hours a day, so he's constantly on the fan 960. But yeah, so he's one of the things that I wanted to actually talk to you about is how you transitioned. I want to bring back the wrestling for sure, but I was doing a little research. I'm trying to be a professional. Yeah. And you have a degree, or you have a diploma or a degree in forest technology.
That's correct. Yeah.
Why did you decide to transition from that? Like, you were at the forefront, in my opinion, when I look at your timeline, you were at the forefront of the environment and kind of changing the planet. What made you decide to then go into, become the general manager of a small town hockey team and go from there?
Ralph Klein.
Oh.
So, to go all the way back, I was, I'm a big podcast listener. So I'm a little bit resident to start the old, well, Duke, let me take you back to the early days and a struggling Rob Kerr. My life has never been about struggle. I just wasn't a really good student. And, in grade 9 of all places, they said, okay, you got to start thinking about post-secondary. And I'm like, what the hell? This is like, I have no idea. So they had a bunch of Nate brochures and I saw forest technology. I like camping. Okay. So I picked that in grade 9. And then my whole high school was about making sure I had the marks for that. Not that I didn't like it. I loved it a lot, but I held two distinctions at Nate. The first was I was the second youngest graduate ever of the forest technology program at 19 years. I graduated. Well, I didn't. I left high school at 17, thought I graduated. Turned out I didn't. Nate let me in anyway. And 2 years later, I got a diploma. But I'm also, the other one that's really interesting in that is I was the only person at the time and back in the 80s, when you applied to Nate, you had to put your first choice and your second choice. I was the only person at that time that had ever put forest technology as 1 and television radio arts as 2. Everybody else would put environmental sciences, oil and gas, and that type of thing. So, and, I've talked to my parents about it. At the time, I chose forestry because I felt like I needed to do something serious, something real. I felt like chasing television, radio, and that sort of thing. That was, you got to be serious, son. You got to have a real job. And so it served me well. It was, 2 years at Nate. 1 year was out in Hinton as an 18-year-old living in a dorm. Lots of field camps and stuff. Hinton. Yeah. So I grew up real quick. Right. Yeah. And then I ended up in Fort McMurray. And then I started I met my wife up there. She was a forest officer as well. And I just ended up volunteering at the local cable company when the 1992 Alberta Winter Games came up. And just got involved kind of in broadcasting on that side. Loved it. Again, you don't know what you don't know. So after it was over, they said, do you want to keep volunteering? Sure. What do you want to do? Well, I don't think there's a late night talk show in Fort McMurray, so I'm going to do that. So I did a Tuesday. It wasn't late night. It was 7:00 on Tuesdays, but I did a talk show, monologue, guests, the whole 9 yards for 3 years. And again, you don't know what you don't know. I wasn't funny, thought I was hilarious. And then got into the Fort McMurray Oil Barons one day because they didn't have a broadcaster. So I started broadcasting there. 1995. Well, Ralph Klein decides he doesn't want as many civil servants. So I'm a forest officer working for the province. I can take a buyout. So now I'm going to chase a dream. So I enrolled at SAIT, took the buyout. We moved to Calgary. And that's when I really kind of, started down the path of broadcasting.
That's an interesting, that's always an interesting story to me. Like, how did you, because that's a lot of people also, once they have an education, a lot of people just, I'll just roll with it. This is what I'm doing. This is what I am. Here I go. A lot of people won't, like you say, they're not going to chase the brass ring, especially once you've got a wife and, and it's one of the things that I can definitely relate. I got into wrestling. I was already married. I had student loans. I'd already been to college. I was 24, I think, when I started training, 23 or 24. so yeah, and it came to a point in life, and it was just like, what else am I going to do? Well, I guess it's either get into this wrestling now or I'll never do it. So it's, you kind of just go for it at that age.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and you know what? I've never been afraid. Like I've always, if I'm afraid of something, I'm afraid of not trying something. And I've done so many things terribly and then gotten back up and dusted myself off and done them again and gotten better. And to me, that was, we moved down to Calgary in 95. I was 25 when I went to first year SAIT. And, it's like any other college. That first day you go through all the cattle calls and they show you all the clubs and everything. And I ran into Ken Babby, the head coach of the SAIT hockey team. And he kind of looked at me and said, "You're a little bit old to be here." And so we started talking, and I told him I was up in Fort McMurray. Well, he was trying to recruit one of the top players that the Oil Barons had. So we got talking about hockey, and he said, "Well, if you're not doing anything, we don't have a big staff. Like, if that's what you're chasing, if you're chasing the NHL dream as a broadcaster, why don't you come and hang out with the hockey team? Maybe you can pick something up." And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Talked to my dad that night, and I was explaining to him, and he said, "You're an idiot if you don't do that. The man just gave you a golden opportunity." Yeah. So next day I went down, and, at that time, Kenny had one assistant coach, but he couldn't come during the week. He could only come for games. So here I am taking first year's broadcasting at SAIT, and I'm on the ice every day with the SAIT Trojans chasing pucks. I wasn't coaching. I don't want anybody to get the idea I was coaching, but I was chasing pucks and I was learning. And that really exposed me to a lot of things. And the next year, Ken got the athletic director's job, and he said to me, "Why don't you come in and we'll revamp the athletics department?" So I left. I never finished my broadcasting degree. I went to a diploma. I went to work for SAIT in the athletics department, but then I got exposed to basketball and all kinds of things. And that's really where the entertainment side of stuff came out for me. We started doing stuff with mascots, and we started doing, trying to entertain fans and things like that. And then the rest is history. Then I ended up in Asst in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, working radio and broadcasting games.
Okay. So, man, yeah, what a wild ride.
Yeah.
But,
oh yeah. Yeah.
And your wife, I mean, I always say, like, behind every successful man is a very patient woman, to let you kind of just chase the dream like that. Like that.
Well, so Frankie, my wife, was she was a forest officer in the early 90s, which was a bit of a groundbreaking thing too. And you talk about, the Me Too movement and all of those sort of things. I saw her go through that. Right. And so she's tough, like real tough, but the best thing that ever happened to me. So I mentioned that, I decided I want to do a talk show on Fort McMurray Community Cable. Well, she booked the guests and she wrote out the cue cards, and she did she's been there all along. And when I decide I want to go to SAIT, I'm going to take a buyout. She takes a buyout. She comes with me. Now she's got to find another job. Lo and behold, things work out for a reason. 10 years later, she gets back with the government down here. We're in Calgary now, and she's back working. So it worked out for her. But oh, no. This is my story is a partnership, has been from day one, and nothing happens without Frankie, for sure.
Yeah. And I just love to hear that, because it's, marriage is work and it's patience. And, people are like, "Jordan, what's your secret?" I'm like, well, for me, I mean, it's a patient wife. Like it's, I'd love to come out with all these pearls of wisdom, but it's, I can be happy or I can be right. And she's obviously patient, blind, and can't smell. That's
yes. Exactly. Same here. Exactly.
Yeah. So now, to tie this all back in, where did your love of wrestling then come in?
Oh, well, has
that always been a lifelong thing?
That goes back to my youth. That goes back to Saturday afternoon and Stampede Wrestling. That goes back to, growing up in Edmonton, the Agricom and the Saturday evening shows and stuff like that.
That was actually a cool place to wrestle in, was the Agricom.
The Agricom, and it was a cool place to watch, right? Yeah. No, my dad wasn't a huge fan. My dad was a boxing guy. So, a lot of our time was spent, tail end of Muhammad Ali, a lot of the, Willie DeWitt stuff and the Scott,
Sean
Olson stuff. We saw a lot of that. My uncle, he was more into the wrestling. So we went, we'd watch wrestling together, and he'd take us to wrestling events and stuff like that. And I would say, I'm probably like a lot of people. I was aware it was there. You know, I watched Saturday. I just, you know, I make the joke all the time. Like the two guys I hated the most in the whole world were Duke Myers and Kerry Brown, because every Saturday afternoon, those SOBs got away with it. Like, and I just couldn't wait till next Saturday.
The loaded glove, is that not one of the, I'm surprised
it's the greatest thing ever.
I'm surprised more people don't use that now. Like, I don't know if it's become passe, but to me, it's one of those like, hey, if any good heels watching, start working a loaded glove now.
Oh, and we'd be at recess or we'd be in the library going, when's that damn thing coming off? Like, honest to God, somebody's got to look into this. Right. But I think it was 1987. I think it was WrestleMania 3, going to the Shaw Conference Center, watching in closed circuit on a big screen with about 5,000 people. And just the spectacle of the whole thing, the fact that it started in broad daylight, ended in dark. We were treated to, you know, one of the greatest singles matches ever in Steamboat Savage. And you knew it at the time. Like you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to know you were watching history.
No, it's not something you look back now and say, oh, you know, we didn't realize we were watching. You knew exactly what you were watching.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and the other one, and I think it's more of a Western Canadian piece, was watching the Bulldogs and then the 6-man and with the Hearts, because the whole, where I was, all 5,000 people changed because those were our guys, right? They're from they're from our neighborhood. They're our guys. We watched them on Saturday. They're on so that's the best, you know, and I just feel like I can remember every single piece of it and marking out to Hogan and Andre and, you know, you never forget that last bit. Like, say what you will about the industry, Hogan's ability to hold a crowd after, and, you know, you're watching Bobby Heenan with his head down and Andre the Giant on that little cart going back. And then you can just remember Hogan posing in there forever and everybody leaves. Right. Yeah. Now I'm hooked. Now I got to buy magazines. Now I got to, you know, start trading tapes and stuff like that. Found a buddy at high school whose parents were separated. So his dad was in Hamilton. So he kept shipping him videotapes of wrestling from Ontario. Nice. So at that point, that's my first real exposure to WWF. Still haven't seen the NWA, but buying the magazines, knew it existed. And, you know, not to bore you with Rob Kerr wrestling stories, but I mentioned Forest Technology. So my second year was in Hinton at the Forest Technology School. So we stayed up there. We had a kind of a lounge, you know, cafeteria, and we had, you know, a TV in there. Right. And the TV, for some reason, Hinton had different cable than I grew up with in Edmonton, and they had WTBS. So, but we didn't pay for it. So it was scrambled. And you remember Duke, scrambled television in the 80s. You get the audio, you don't get the video. Yeah. But I one day just happened to nobody was there. It was Saturday night in Hinton. Everybody's downtown at the bar at the zoo. And I just happened to turn the TV on and flipping the channels and found TBS. And I heard Tony Schiavone talking about the NWA, and I couldn't see it, but I heard Sting and I heard Luger. And my embarrassing wrestling story is that I would spend 2 hours on Saturday nights by myself in a dark cafeteria listening to that show. I did not see NWA. I did not see Ric Flair. I did not see Sting on TV until the 90s.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is. And that the truth is, I didn't either. I didn't see until cable became a thing and we started getting TBS in Canada.
Yeah.
I never, you know, I can still kind of tell you the first time I saw the Steiners wrestle the Harlem Heat over at my buddy's place in high school.
Right. I mean, fortunately saw the Road Warriors, because if you remember, they were on AWA and TSN carried AWA for a while. So, you know, I got to see a few of those, you know, and AWA was always a funny wrestling promotion to me. Like it just didn't feel right. I don't know. It exposed me to, you know, Colonel De Beers and Baron von Raschke and, you know, the Rockers, crazy memories we have. But I remember watching Doug Summers and Playboy Buddy Rose against the Midnight Rockers. And I remember, I believe it was Buddy Rose who had his ankle. No, Doug Summers had his ankle broken, I believe, in that match. And it was on the outside. I remember that because I think Sherry Martel was the manager. And so there's vivid moments
so
of AWA
in that ring, hey? As you're running through that list, like holy Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but I didn't know it. It felt and funny. It felt cheap to me. Right. You know, the WWF at that time begins to ruin you for everything. Right. It really begins to ruin you.
To me, that was our problem when I was growing up. One of the things that got me to stop watching wrestling, because I was a pretty diehard Stampede Wrestling mark when I was a kid. Yeah. And, you know, we didn't see WWE until, I was probably maybe in junior high school when Maple Leaf Wrestling started coming on after Stampede
that's
Wrestling.
right.
And so that was our first exposure to it. And we would actually turn it off because we felt it was too, the Stampede guys hit each other harder. We felt it was cartoony. Like we thought it was, Stampede Wrestling's real. That's bullshit wrestling.
Oh, no,
yeah, we legit.
Thank you. Because I can tell you at McNally High School in Edmonton, in the library, I held a conference on that very subject. Me and my buddies sat there and we were like, okay, I get why people say wrestling is fake. Here's the example of that. But you can't tell me what Owen Hart did off the top rope and landing on Mukka Singh like that was fake. You can't fake that. So our determination right here, right now, that's fake. This isn't. Had the exact same conversation.
Yeah. And no disrespect to the WWE at the time, it was just a different thing.
It was just different. Yes. Yeah.
But, at the same time at Stampede, there weren't Andre the Giants and the Hulk Hogans, like you say, these guys, these people that legitimately your jaw drops when they walk by because they're just that they can captivate you just with a presence.
But I know what I know now that I didn't know then was sports entertainment versus pro wrestling.
100%.
And I always thought that was just a marketing thing. Yeah. And now see, and we can get into it, but the pandemic allowed me a real opportunity to go back and look and relive my childhood. And say what you will about the current product of the WWE. It's not great, but it's very cyclical. Like they've done it before. Yeah. Taking a Hogan challenger, beating him, and then turning him into a tag team champion. That's a tried and tested Vince McMahon, back to the early 80s. Right. Yeah. So they've never deviated from who and what they are, but I didn't know it at the time. I always thought it was, wow, they're just trying to be cute. Nope. There's a difference.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, truth is I thought sports entertainment came out of kind of I don't know if steroid era is the right word, because I don't want to, anyways. They were being looked at by the government on a certain level.
Yes.
Do you remember when the baseball,
100% the steroid trials
was going down in every professional sport? And that's when, we're not professional wrestlers, we're sports entertainment. And I could be full of crap because, I've had a lot of concussions, but that to me is when I really started to notice that term really sling around.
I guess so. But to me, it was going back and watching the Madison Square Garden show that set up the Lauper, Piper, Hogan feud with Wendy Richter.
Yeah.
And the Rock, I guess they call it the Rock and Wrestling, right? And Captain Lou Albano. And you could tell, like, SD Jones was not going to be part of this. Les Thornton was not going to be part of this. You could tell that this was something, transformational, right? And I think you're right. I think they bought hook, line, and sinker. Are we pro wrestling? No. Look, we have the Goon. Here's Mantor. Like, that was at its extreme. But again, I'm jumping all over the place here, but you and I were talking off the air, but you got a WrestleMania coming up here with mostly 40-year-olds and half of them are entertainers, not even wrestlers. Right.
Well, I watched a documentary a little while ago called What Drives Us. It was directed by Dave Grohl, I believe. And it was about punk rock bands and these bands that kind of get in vans and tour across the country for little or no money, just for the love of what they do.
Yeah.
And now I've kind of forgotten. They interviewed Flea. Sorry, sometimes I forget.
Yeah, from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, you bet. They interviewed Flea, and one of the things he said is if you look back 30 years ago, the biggest bands in the world were Metallica, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and he named a couple other that are gone off my head right now. And he said, if you look at who the biggest rock bands in the world are today, it's still Metallica and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the Foo Fighters, etc. And unfortunately, wrestling has kind of done the same thing to itself, and it hasn't done a good job, I don't think, short of the Attitude Era with, capturing lightning in a bottle with Stone Cold and Rock coming up at the same time is unbelievable. Two generational athletes on the roster at the same time with another full roster full of Hall of Famers.
Well, it's 80s hockey. That was Gretzky Lemieux, right?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, that's a perfect comparison, because you look back, it's just like, there's 25 people on that roster, male and female, and every one of them should be in the Hall of Fame. Like it's unbelievable. Yeah. So, and I think that wrestling is kind of the same way, where if you look back at who the biggest stars were 20 years ago or 25 years ago, they're still the biggest stars today.
But don't you think don't you think, Duke, that far be it for me to cast stones at Vincent K. McMahon or anybody really, but don't you think that the short-sightedness of the territories, like the gobbling up of the territories and not understanding what the territories should have been? I mean, it's to me, it's the baseball model. You should have had single A, double A, triple A, and then the show.
Well, that's what they should be doing now, right? Like the Performance Center, for all intents and purposes, I think is a really good idea. Same with like the Performance Institute that the UFC has. These things are fantastic. It gets your athletes under one roof. You know, when you want them to do things a certain way, it gives you all that access. And I think that's great. But to me, when I look at the WWE roster in particular right now, AEW's, to me, AEW was started as an indie worker promotion and is now starting to use some, national talents that are coming from WWE. But if you look at the WWE in the last little while, most of their biggest stars were guys that came up on the independents, in my opinion. And so I think that is a Performance Center great? For sure. There's great talent there. There's great coaching there. There's, all the right things in place there. But I still think, to your point, the independents getting to go work night in, night out, work with different people night in, night out, work different styles night in, night out. That's really where you find your hand. But then the unfortunate side, and this is where I'll kind of go a little bit hard on the paint on the WWE, is that I've been one of my few critiques about what they do with talent. Cause I mean, being at that level, there's so many things that are taken into consideration. A lot of us don't think of it. But one of the biggest things I think is they'll say, you know what, Rob, we've seen you on independence. We like your look. We like your style. We like the way you wrestle. We like the way you talk. Then they sign you and they change your look. They change your style. They change the wrestle. They change the way you talk. And then they wonder why you can't get over. And that's something I will always hammer on in the WWE, where AEW's, kind of giving their people a little more creative freedom. And I think that comes across in some of some of it comes across in, you get a little bit, the production value maybe isn't there. The production level maybe isn't there, but you do get some really good organic stuff like you're getting, say, with MJF right now.
Yeah, but and it's funny because I would kind of veer back to my old job, which is that's sports. Yeah. If you look at the scouting of young talent, boy, we love this kid in junior. He does this, and this. Let's draft him. Okay, we're going to burn a first-round pick on him. Wow, we brought him in. All right, send him down to our developmental system, and we'll teach him how to do it our way. Right. And I've had so many coaches that have lost jobs or moved on and gone into scouting, and they come back and they go, it's the same thing. It's absolutely insane. Because when you're a scout, you're looking at this raw talent and you're going, wow, he wows me with this, or she wows me with that.
The creativity, and then blah, blah, blah.
Right. And then you get them and you go, all right, now we're going to put our stamp on them. Right. And to me, going back to wrestling, I mean, you look at how disastrous was Rocky Maivia. How disastrous it was, you think of when Stone Cold came in, the Ringmaster, when he was with Ted DiBiase, right?
The Ringmaster character.
The Ringmaster, right? Like all of this stuff, like MJF. Is he not Roddy Piper? Is this not Roddy Piper? Like, he's living it. Like, everything. And again, you tell me, it's your business. I'm just on the outside looking in, but everything I hear is the best are always their own personalities turned up to 11. And I don't understand why you have to put a mask on Karrion Kross. I don't understand why you have to change Pete Dunne's name to Butch. Like now, I think it's what because I don't it's sports entertainment.
Why do you invest a bunch of money in a guy? Why do you take a guy that you've had now working on NXT for 4 years?
Yeah.
Since you started NXT UK, you've got all this money invested in this kid's name. I don't know if there are Pete Dunne action figures. I'm sure there's Pete Dunne t-shirts out there.
Yeah.
You've got all this money invested in this kid. And then all of a sudden now you've got to rebrand him.
Yeah.
And then they're going to turn around in 2 months and say, geez, kid, you're not getting over.
Yeah. Shorty G.
Yeah. I do think he's talented enough to make his way. I think he'll be okay. But at the same time, it's just like, Jesus, like stop handcuffing these guys. And
and that to me is, on the same token, I think you could look at AEW and go, well, this is a bit of a free for all.
Yeah. 100%.
And they're doing a better job, but my God, the factions, like a year ago, it was just a bunch of factions, right? Like, there needs to be a deft hand in there. And I think the talent, again, MJF will rise, right?
Yeah,
I think Keith Lee rise. I think Keith Lee is, yes, he got let go and all this. I think he rises.
Well, I think with Jericho there, they'll know just how to use Keith Lee.
Exactly.
That's what I'm counting on anyways. Like,
yes.
When you hear Keith Lee, they want him to become, the Bearcat. And, I think the WWE, one of the things I would say, and this isn't a critique, this is just something, this isn't strictly an opinion on how I think some of the thought process is there. They're such a ratings driven company. They're, that the all important 18 to 49 demographic.
Yeah.
That they're literally, yes, they're worried about selling t-shirts, and yeah, they're looking a year down the road to look who's working WrestleMania or the Rumble and things like that. But I really think that they're literally looking every week. What can, people are looking, we want long-term booking, we want long-term storylines. And they do too. But every week it's what can we do for the most impact to pop the rating this week? And it's so, and oftentimes, unfortunately, a detriment to storylines and character.
Yeah, but don't you think that, like, if you take the WWE company and product and take it to people who don't know it, what are you telling them they are? They're a content company. Yes. They create content.
For sure.
And I would say, this is old man Rob getting on his soapbox again. When you and I went through high school, we studied the Industrial Revolution. I think in 20, 30 years, when kids go through high school, they're going to study the social media era. Yeah. And I would, to kind of explain the WWE, I would go to my old business, which is radio and television. And I would tell you that once they put the people meter in and they started being able to register audiences in 15-minute increments, it took all the fun out of it, because your boss would come in and go, what were you talking about at 4:15? We were talking about the Flames. Okay, talk about them at 4:45 again. And then again, I hate to say uneducated because they're not uneducated, but business always, they're chasing viral all the time. We need viral. Give us a viral moment. Give us something that pops. And the WWE is a content company. That's what they are. AEW is a wrestling company. I think there's a huge difference. They want to be a content company. They bought ROH. That helps with the content.
It's kind of like when you hear when Ted Turner, the story when Turner bought WCW and phoned Vince and said, I'm in a wrestling thing. And Vince said, I'm not in wrestling. I'm in sports entertainment.
Right. And I would say Rogers and Bell right now, they're in content. Like there's no love of sport. I mean, I hate to break people's bubble. Here we are talking about wrestling and worried about people, it's fake. I hate to break people's bubble, but hometown hockey is not about, it's not as family orientated, and it's not a kumbaya moment. It's a ratings driver. It's intended to get content. It's intended to do that. It's wrapped in this, Canadiana of hockey.
This is straight up big business.
It really is. And that's why podcasting to me is so fascinating. This is not that. This is two guys passionately talking about something. The problem now is you've got Bell and Rogers going, we've got to be in the podcast business. We've got to make podcasts. And that it's the same thing in the WWE, right? We've got to create content. We need content in 180 countries. What's going to pop? I don't know if you heard Chris Jericho's podcast with Steven Regal here.
I've not listened to that yet.
It's first of all, for everybody who's ragging on the WWE, give it a listen, because it's going to change your, he's straight up is just really complimentary to how they treated him and took care of his health issues.
He's been nothing but respectful since he's been released.
100%.
Yeah.
But he does give a little bit of background into their thinking with these camps. Okay, we've got television now in Kuala Lumpur. Go see who their best athletes are, right? And why? This Veer coming thing isn't for us. It's for India, right?
For sure.
It's content for India. And that to me, I worry sometimes because we get in wrestling as observers, we get so myopic about it. It only happens here. It only happens here. WWE is reflective of Fox. It's reflective of ESPN. It's reflective of Bell. It's reflective of Rogers. Yeah. It's a big company that's trying to satisfy shareholders.
Yeah. Well, to your point, when a lot of people were upset about Jinder Mahal getting a push, there's a lot of real hard, people that just don't understand, like you say. First of all, he's that guy's look is second to none. He's the best, quote unquote, best looking heel they have. Like, I just love his look.
And big man.
Yeah, he's a big guy. He can move. Yeah. But a lot of people don't realize, like, oh, geez, why are they pushing this guy? Well, because they're just starting the network in India. Of course, they're going to push this guy.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get TV there. So, and people just sort of, they lose sight of that. And the other thing is, it's one thing to say, this is what I want to see on my local indie promotion, or this is how I think wrestling should be. But when you sit down and watch The Terminator, when you sit down and this, I keep hammering on these things. If you got everything you wanted out of a Terminator movie, it'd probably be the shits. There'd be no buildup. There'd be no anticipation, just be stuff blowing up everywhere.
No, going back and watching the NWA and Jim Crockett from 85 through about 88. And you listen to Arn Anderson and Ric Flair. They were brilliant in their use of television.
Yeah. Because
the Four Horsemen never lost on television. But when the Four Horsemen came to your town, they lost. Right. And it goes back to Duke Myers and Kerry Brown. They won again. I have to go back and they have to get beaten. I need that comeuppance. Now they're coming to Edmonton and they're taking on the British Bulldogs who are back from the WWF. This time it'll happen, right? For
sure. No question.
And that's the problem with social media. That's the problem with wanting, I'm sure you and I have similar tastes. I love Game of Thrones. I love Walking Dead. But the smart fans, the social media stuff drives me away because I'm tired. I just want to watch a show and I don't want to have to dissect what they did wrong. And I don't want to dissect about where the character went wrong or whatever. The Sopranos finale, I sat in this house, in that room, and swore to God that my cable and power went out, right? In the finale. And then I'm listening to Howard Stern the next day and it's the worst finale ever. I'm reading in the internet, worst finale ever. Yeah. Then with some time, 10 years later, the brilliance of David Chase. Here's how it worked. Here's the oral history of it. Right. We live in a time, Duke, that we just, and you'll see this on my Twitter account. I say sports is fun all the time. We don't have fun. Yeah. We're armchair general managers. We're armchair bookers. We're armchair politicians. We're armchair doctors. We're armchair. Yeah. Wrestling's at its purest, its brilliance. Turn your mind off. Enjoy it.
Just enjoy it for what it is. And really and truly, I believe it was Ken Holland who was a GM in Detroit at the time. And he was making some moves that the fans didn't necessarily agree with. And somebody asked him what he thought when the fans kind of gave their opinions about his moves. And he said, if those people knew anything about hockey, they'd be in hockey. Like, he didn't give a shit what they thought. And there's part of it that goes to that. Like, if all these fans, and I mean, obviously we can only have so many promotions and so many bookers, but to me, it's like, if you guys know so much about booking, book it. Book it and see what work in front of a crowd every night in and night out. And that to me, Rob, would be one of my issues with WWE booking. And it comes down to, they've got producers, they've got road agents. Yeah. But I don't think they have enough what I call wrestlers or workers in that creative room. Because
but can they? Because because everything we're told from the outside, it's Vince. Right. Everything 100%. We're told.
Yeah. They're rewriting that show. They book it Thursday. They're rewriting it Monday.
So to me, when I see RK Bro and the Alpha Academy, and then I see it again next week and they've introduced another group and it's the same. It's because Vince is watching the 15-minute increments. He's seeing where the spike is. He's going, that's driving. Go back to that. Do that again. Right. And that's Rogers does that. Bell does that. ESPN does that. Fox does that. Again, sports entertainment versus pro wrestling. The Wardlow turn drove me nuts. It drove me nuts. It took too long. Yeah. It's way too long. But then I stopped and I thought about it and I go, no, Rob, you're just doing what everybody else is doing.
Well, quite frankly, I thought it was too soon. They could have got a year out of that.
Right. But I'm so conditioned to give me what I want. I want it now. Right. Yeah. That Punk match, which we saw some umbrage to the great Bret Hart in. Yes. Why didn't they do it there? Why? Yeah. And I give Tony Khan and I give Jericho and Page and Omega and the Bucks all the credit in the world because they are taking their time. They're not rushing. Like, how long? We all knew Page was going to become the world champion. Yeah. But they milked it. We all knew Jurassic Express was going to be champions, but they milked it. Yeah. And there's something about that I enjoy. But when I'm like, I haven't watched Raw or SmackDown from start to finish in over a year. Right. And I've seen bits and pieces of it. I'm aware of what's going on, but I'm sorry. I don't need, the Alpha Academy. And I'm picking on, there's some really good wrestlers there. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But the booking, to your point, the booking's just, for a wrestling fan, it's garbage.
Well, I honestly, and I keep coming back to being a TV writer definitely has its merit. And you know, and from what you hear, they're not just hiring any Johnny TV writer. Like, you need to have some serious credits. You know, you need to have some writing credit behind you before they're letting you into that office. But at the same time, I think pro wrestling is the same, but it's different. And I use the term sports wrestling. I'll use the term pro wrestling to describe both pro wrestling and sports entertainment.
Sure.
But the one thing I will say is the way you tell a story most of the time is generally the same. It's a formula. We all understand that, you know, the Hollywood formulated movie, and wrestling's the same way. But I really and truly believe on a certain level, unless you've been in a ring night in and night out for a long time, it's hard to understand what fans will react to in a certain way. And to me, like, does that mean a writer could never get it? No, that would be an erroneous statement for sure. But I do think that, you know, if you've got a room with 5 writers in it, and one of them's Vince, obviously, 3 of them are, you know, come from, I'll just say, Hollywood. And you've got one, you know, God rest his soul, but you got a Pat Patterson sitting at the table. That's not enough representation from the wrestling world.
No,
in my opinion. You know, I would get one Hollywood writer in there and 4 workers, you know, bring in, you know, like when I found out that Arn Anderson got let go, forget Steven Regal. I mean, that's an unbelievable. But when I heard Arn Anderson got released, I couldn't,
I'll put another shameless plug. If you're not listening to the Arn Show, if you're not listening to that and have him go through the 80s, it's a masterclass. It's absolutely a masterclass. So when we were getting ready to do Battle in the Dome and we were doing the CDC promos, you know, he talked about a promo, right? He talked about, you put over your opponent. You just gloss them, you shine them up, you make them look great.
If you tell everyone your opponent's a bum when you beat them, who'd you beat?
Right, exactly. And to me, you're, you know, the only one thing I would point out that I think, you know, the saving grace for the wrestling portion of WWE has been Roman Reigns. I think that program has been really well done. I think it needs a little freshening now.
I think they found something that worked for him finally in the last year.
Yes, you know? But I wonder how much of that is Paul Heyman too, though. Right?
Yeah. And I mean, Heyman's a masterpiece, but I just think they. Now I'm going to have a hard time with the chronology of but when he kind of made this last heel turn.
Well, he came back, right? He was missing. He had the cancer.
And he was over as a face because they were that's when you're right. And thank you for bringing me there. After he came back from being sick, he was over as a face. And then when they turned him, they finally got the crowd where they wanted him to be. You know what I mean? The crowd finally bought into Roman. And you know, I honestly believe, and this is, I'm going to come back to this a little bit, because he finally made the actual Roman Reigns emotional connection with the crowd, not this is our guy emotional connection with the crowd.
Don't you? How much of that? And I want to know from you, how much of that was when the Shield broke up? You know, that they got on him, like the smart fan, the internet fan got on him, right? And they seem to be trying to control the narrative, you know, the Philadelphia crowd or whatever you want to call it.
For 5 years, the smart fans, for a good 5 years there, they were what I call just hijacking shows.
Right.
You know, you know, kind of, you know, for what it's worth. And again, like, okay, the booking isn't what you want, then turn it off and show them that's not what you want. That's the only way. If you want the booking to change, if anyone wants a booking to change, there's only one way to do that.
Oh, and like you said, I've turned it off.
Yeah,
right.
Like, well, and the Cleveland Browns, of course, are in the news right now.
Sure.
On the top of my head.
Yeah.
But if you want the Cleveland Browns, if you want the Office to do better, Cleveland Browns fans, you got to stop buying tickets to the games.
And I can tell you, you're absolutely right. And I can tell you that, you know, that's something that, you know, being in the ticket selling business and being on the sports side, that that's, you can call and complain about your beer. You can call and complain about the volume. But when people, now, I would point out that I was around in, I think it was 2007, when the Calgary Flames signed Todd Bertuzzi as a UFA. And for 2 straight days, both newspapers printed letters to the editors, and people were, I'm canceling my tickets. I'm canceling my tickets. I'm canceling my tickets. It didn't happen. Now I get wanting to vent and that, I think the Deshaun Watson situation is a different one. I think it's really timely that you bring it up. And I know I'm fascinated by it because what I, and I don't know, maybe we can use this as a launching point into what, we do with the Hitmen. But to me, my belief in pro sports is moving forward, you as the consumer want entertainment, you want value, but you also want to know that your values align with the values of who you're giving that money to. Yeah. So exactly what do you stand for?
Yeah.
And
your politics don't have to be mine because I buy a ticket to watch you play football, or I'm not going to agree with everything the Calgary Flames do in order for me to buy a ticket there, or every player on that roster, or nor am I going to hold the Flames office or the Hitman office accountable for what a player does.
No, but I think I've got to be on my front feet. I think I've got to be doing things that make you a fan go, okay, they're where I need to be. I'm wearing my Every Child Matters sweatshirt. That game's coming up here. That to me is what I left when I retired from radio and the media. And I came over here. My thought was, I think the platform of sports can be used in a different way, especially for a team like the Hitmen that's in a very crowded market. How do we stand out? They already had established a teddy bear toss. I thought community was the way to go.
So I'll be the first to say that Calgary fans, I don't care what anyone says, Calgary fans are fickle. Calgary fans are used to having the best. So the fact that Hitmen are, to me, successful in this market is a tell on what the team, the players, and most importantly, what the front office and guys like yourself are doing with that club to make them successful.
It's to me, it's the millennial mom who's now become the critical purchaser in our world. Right. That they're the ones determining where, for us, with the Roughnecks, with the Stampeders, with the Flames, we tend to be the team now that is the entry point for young families.
Right.
So we have, it's non-negotiable. We have to be out doing things in the community. We have Bret Hart. Yes. Bret Hart was an important game for us to do, but there needed to be a charitable component, which was perfect because it was Bret and it's prostate. We can do that. We need to be standing for something. We need to be in the community doing something. So when I watch what's going on in Cleveland, I watch with great interest because there's still the 800-pound gorilla on all the world. The NFL is still the 800-pound gorilla, right? And it comes back, I think it comes back to wrestling. And part of, I'm very curious to see when the WWE begins to tour again and everything, what the results are going to be, because if and again, you and I both know what you read and what you see isn't necessarily conducive to what's out there, but what do you stand for? What are you all about? And this ties all the way back to the beginning of sports entertainment versus pro wrestling, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the things I'm hearing, just to, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent now.
Please.
Because what the WWE's politics are, honestly, they're baffling to me, to be quite frank with you. The fact that you'll go so hard in the paint against Russia, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, and then wrestle shows in Saudi. I think it's an odd juxtaposition to me.
It really is. Yeah.
And I don't want to, but one of the things I did hear recently is that I've kind of heard they're looking at not going back to, I'm tying in they're a content creator now, that they're not going to be running house shows. That they're moving away from that. They're strictly becoming production and content.
And that wouldn't surprise me at all, Duke. It's funny. We started off talking about how we got into it, right? Like 15 minutes of every freaking wrestling show when you and I were a kid. We're coming to Rosetown. Yeah. Don't forget the WWF's going to be in Hamilton.
Scrolling across the bottom, too.
Right? And that's what it was. And I don't, it's funny. I listen to people like Arn Anderson. And I do find Arn interesting that, that part of the, not criticism, but there's a couple of things that he said that lead me to believe that, part of the issue with AEW wrestlers right now is they don't tour, right? So they're really limited in dates. When you started off, the key was get your reps, right?
Yep.
For me as a play-by-play guy, I couldn't get enough seat time. Like by the time I got to the National Hockey League, I had called thousands of games and thousands, not thousands of different sports, but a bunch of different sports. You need seat time. Yeah. And I worry a little bit about the product if you aren't doing shows. Now, 300 shows a year or all that might be a little bit much. But
when the guys were working 9 days a week in the late 80s or through the 90s there.
Yeah.
Like that to me is insane when you hear that. And we worked we thought we worked a heavy schedule because like my first tour with Stampede Wrestling was we worked 10 shows in 11 nights. And I thought, that's a lot of days.
Were you on the show? Was Bruce ever the booker for you?
Yes. Yeah. That's why when I broke in, Bruce and Ross trained me, and that's why they were the bookers when I worked.
Okay. So I brought I brought Stampede to Estevan for the Bruins. So I've been connected to wrestling. Okay. We brought him in to do a show in Estevan.
Right.
And that's the first time I ever met Bruce.
Okay. Bruce is a wildcat, man.
Bruce, when I came to Calgary, he was so nice the second time. So when I came in 2003, he reached out and we'd go for lunch, and it was just amazing, right? He's
such a fountain of knowledge and such a character. Like they don't make him like Bruce Hart anymore.
No, they don't. But I remember coming through, and we had Richard Pound was the main event, the principal.
Yeah.
Richard Pound.
He passed away, but I'm a massive Richard Pound fan. In fact, one of my first tours was with Pound, and he was on vacation and brought his family in the motorhome for 2 weeks. It was, I'd wrestle with his kids in the ring before every show. It was one of the best times. I'm sorry. As soon as you say Richard.
No. To me, and again, that's what's so magical about wrestling to me. Is those moments is that, right. I'm big on experiences, and, I would go to our show, we just recently did for Brett on March 5th. And, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but, we take the stars of the PWA who really been out of, not all of them, but most of them have been out of sight, out of mind for 2 years, put them on the concourse and kids were lined up. Yeah. Right.
I'll be honest with you.
That's what wrestling is.
That did surprise me. That really did surprise me how big that lineup was. 100%. I was surprised.
But it's experience, right? It's an experience, and getting that experience, getting that opportunity, right?
I have to say one thing for anybody out there that got one of my autographed posters that said Duke Durango plus Zoe Sager, True Love Always. I was just kidding.
but again, and I think about my time in Estevan, and I think we didn't have a big show. We might have had 150, 200 people there, but they come to the rink the next year. Are you bringing wrestling back, or are you going to do something like that? That to me,
passionate and loyal.
Yeah. And I tip my hat to the John Cena's of the world who set the world record for, wishes and those guys that, Natty, you see Natty, Neidhart in the community and things like that.
They use their platforms, man. Like I've heard people talk a lot of shit about John Cena in and out of wrestling. And I was just like, I don't care what you say about John Cena, man. That guy does more for Make-A-Wish than anyone. And that carries water for me.
Right. And to me, that again, it goes, we're jumping around here, but that's what I think about, when I'm looking at my, the two teams that I work with, the Roughnecks and the Hitmen, that's where we need to be. We need to be offering experiences. That's why, Bret Hart and Battle in the Dome is so important to me. It's these experiences. And even, we can talk a little bit about the CDC, but for me, CSEC grinds, like we grind. We have the Flames going all the time, the Stamps going, and it's sports is it's a good life. Like it's a good life, but it's, there's sometimes you go without rewards, and it was just so exciting to have my, coworkers and some managers, quite honestly, participate and help set up the ring and wear the shirts and come out and all that sort of thing. Like, it's another day in the office for Duke Durango, but for Paul Kong, who's, one
I
of the
don't think
DPs,
you understand what a great experience that was.
No, I know, but I'm trying to pop it a bit here. But, here we got Paul Kong, who's, vice president of finance for CSEC, wearing a CDC shirt, coming out to the ring. And it's just the greatest thing in the whole world. Like, that's why I hope they still tour. And that's why I hope that we get wind under our sails when it comes back to independent wrestling and territorial wrestling and stuff like that. And people come, and again, fun. And I know there's so much dark all the time, but man, it's just, the sport. That's the best part about sports. We always said John Short is my mentor, and John was a legend in he's a Hall of Famer, legend in Edmonton.
I want to talk about when you kind of started a show with him.
Yeah, we can do that.
Forefront of internet broadcasting.
So, yeah. Well, I mentioned before I worked in Estevan, and I was the voice of the Bruins, and I was chasing the hockey dream at that point, and thought I was going to Louisville, Kentucky, to work for the Panthers American League affiliate, and got all the paperwork and everything, and sold the house in Estevan, My 18-month-old daughter, Jennifer, got sent back to Edmonton to my parents, and my mom was going to fly to Louisville with Jennifer, and my wife and I were going to take the dogs and drive from Estevan, Saskatchewan to Louisville, Kentucky. And the good folks at Louisville sent me all the documents, and they said, okay, Rob, you go, we were 20 minutes from North Portal, which was the border. They said, go down there. It's going to take you a half hour, 5 minutes. You're going to fill out this visa. And then 10 minutes, they're going to do a background or an interview, and then 15 minutes to run the background check. They're going to give you the visa, and you're on your way to Louisville. 4.5 hours later, I was kicked out of the United States and sent back to Canada. Because I had a force technology diploma and I did not have a degree was the issue. They didn't understand how somebody was going to go down and work in hockey without a degree.
Right.
So they kicked me out. Our house was gone, drove back to Edmonton. I grew up in Edmonton in the 80s, listened to John Short. John Short was the first radio superstar that I ever knew, talk show host. I called his show when I was, a kid. As a matter of fact, when I was 13 years old, John had a bus trip to the first ever game in the Saddle Dome, Oilers and Flames. And it was the opening of the Olympic Saddle Dome. And so we drove, my dad and I went on the bus trip, and I was the only kid. Everybody else was knee deep into beers. And on the way back, I'll never forget, John Short came and sat and talked to me for 20 minutes about sports. And I was just 13. So he meant a lot to me. So when I was sitting at home waiting for Louisville to get me back into the States, I heard John, he was on from 9 to 11 from Northlands Racetrack. And, that was, he didn't have a website, but he had an email address. So I just sent him an email. And I said, hey, John, my name's Rob. I'm working in hockey. I'm going down to Louisville, listening to you. I just want to know what a great, inspiration you were in my career. Thank you very much. Well, he responded. He said, oh, fantastic. Listen, I'm doing the show. If you ever want to come up, it's just at the racetrack. Come on up. So I went and watched one show, and, Duke, honestly, I was the first time in my life I was ever on unemployment, and I got the greatest unemployment worker ever, because I went in, I told them the situation, and they said, oh, well, you're fine. And I said, do I have to check in? No, just let us know when you get the visa. So I was literally collecting an unemployment check, waiting for Louisville to get me into the States. And so I started hanging around with John, and I had done some internet broadcasting. We had broadcasted the Estevan Bruins games. SaskTel was big into the emerging technologies. So I worked with SaskTel. So for 3 years, Frankie, my wife, would take our ghetto blaster, tune it to CJ 1280 in Estevan, run a cable from the headphones into our computer, and we would stream all the Estevan Bruin games from my house.
Wow.
And so it was the early ages, right?
Yeah.
So here I am sitting on my thumb in Edmonton, not doing anything.
Though, man.
Yeah. Well, anyway, John and I were talking. He was doing this show, and, we just got talking one day. Dreamers, right? We're all dreamers. What can we do? And John was always a big advocate for amateur sport, right?
Right.
And at that time, the early, it's 2000, and we just wish we could do more for, kids and stuff. And so I started telling him about what we were doing in Saskatchewan and with the Bruins, and he got interested, and he got a partner involved, and we started a company called AnySportAnytime.com. And we became kind of an early internet broadcast company, which there are plenty of now, but were none back then. But we would do high school football. We would do ACAC sports. We would do sprint cars. We would do AJHL games. We did it all. And we had this company, and my claim to fame in my first year was we came down to Calgary in the famous Max Midget hockey tournament, and we broadcasted 30 games in 7 days, right from Max Bell. And I was exhausted. But
were you doing play-by-play?
Yeah, I did play-by-play on all.
Oh my gosh! How did you not lose your voice?
I didn't.
Wow.
And we didn't. But you don't know what you don't know. I'm stupid, right? I just keep doing it. So we would do things like the Viking Cup out in Camrose. I'm sure some of your listeners remember that. It was a big old international hockey tournament out there. But I did indoor soccer before they collapsed. I did the Edmonton Drillers for half a year. I traveled to Wichita, Kansas, and Milwaukee on a road trip with a full desktop computer and a full monitor, not a laptop, a full computer and desk in a suitcase. And I traveled, and I set up, and I did the indoor soccer and then the team folded. So that was so much fun.
Right.
So anyway, that rolled over, and then John ended up buying airtime for an afternoon sports show. So we moved from 1260, which was oldies at the time, and little did we know in Edmonton. And John got on CJCA The Light, which was a Christian station.
Okay.
So John did sports on this Christian station from 4 to 6:30. And I helped out. I covered the Oilers. I covered the Eskimos. I helped produce and everything like that. And then they came to me and they said, do you want your own show? And I said, I love it. And they said, well, we've got 11 to 1 a.m. So what will it take? Well, it's going to cost you $50,000. So I went to the bank and got a $50,000 loan and bought into the company. And lo and behold, I had a show from 11 to 1 in Edmonton called Just a Game. It's Just a Game.
So how did that work? How did you get your 50 grand back? Were you selling?
I never did. I lost it.
Well, and we've all done that. Like
we've lost. No, I lost it. But
you essentially you just buy yourself a job, which a lot of us have done in different ways.
Right.
Yeah.
So I worked in Edmonton for 1 year, did this show, had a ton of fun with it, had a great loyal listenership, had a young man named Jason Greger working with me. And then in 2003, one of the station program directors said, did you know that the Flames are looking for a host for Flames TV? No, I can't do that. We live across the street from my mom. And then I moved down.
I need to back you up again because of technical difficulty. So you heard the Flames were looking. You said, I just bought a house across the street from my mom's. Is that? Yeah. And that's where I lost you.
And okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So I go back. So I'm not going to bid on the job in Calgary because my mom was here. We were living across the street from my mom where I grew up. She's by herself, and I'm not going to leave her in Edmonton by herself. And then she calls me over one day and she says, if you really want to bid on that job in Calgary, I'll move to Calgary.
Wow.
So I bid on the job, ended up getting the job. So April of 2003, it's first round of the playoffs. I'm still working for John and I'm covering the Dallas Edmonton series. I get a phone call in the press box and they bought a house. So I haven't even seen the house. I never saw the house until I moved into it in Calgary. And I moved down to Calgary in 2003. Jason Greger ends up taking over my show from 11 to 1 and has now created this juggernaut on Team 1260 in Edmonton in the afternoons. I mean, he's fantastic. He's really good. But it's kind of a cool legacy in that way. And then, I go down to Calgary. They missed the playoffs. There's no love for this team. The season starts. There's 9,000 people in the stands, 12,000 people in the stands. November, they acquire a guy named Kiprusoff. They catch lightning in a bottle. And the next thing you know, I'm on this wild 2004 ride that really kind of established me because I was doing post-game, a show called Overtime. What an original name. But, when they beat Vancouver in the first round, I took calls until like 4 o'clock in the morning, but at 2 o'clock in the morning, Craig Conroy got home and I was still on the air. He called the show. So we have this famous call of Craig Conroy calling into the show after they just won this game. And, this will bore a lot of fans, but for Flames fans will remember it. Like, they scored with 6 seconds left. I think it was Matt Cook scored to tie it and send it to overtime. And I remember saying to Conroy, I said, what was it? You're watching from the bench. What's it like when Cook scores? He goes, it was like somebody kicked me in the nuts. And then, so that became the show took off. And so in the Detroit series, I did a post-game show from 1 o'clock in the afternoon till 11:30 at night, just all the way through, took calls. That's just the fever. I did when they beat them in game 6, I went on till 5:15 in the morning. It was just, I was just in the right place at the right time, caught lightning in a bottle and everything took off from there. So yeah, I look back at any sport, anytime, in John and Edmonton, and it was too early. It was just too early. It's really in many ways what a lot of technologies have become. There's a lot of that internet broadcasting now. I'm proud. I'm really, really proud of it. I'm proud of what we did. So first I had a server farm. I'm one of the few people that can say I actually had a server farm. And by that, I mean, I had a closet in a building with 2 servers in it.
Right.
And that's what I said at the beginning. I've been around technology for a while and I saw it. And, if I have one regret in life, Duke, I think it's just simply that for a young broadcaster now, man, like I had to volunteer at ABC Cable in Fort McMurray, and there was just not opportunities, and now you can do this, and you can, there's so much social and stuff like that. I can't keep up with it. It's just beyond my measure. But yeah, anysportingtime.com, John Short, is just a huge part of my career and a really neat part. And that's. I wish I was
the legacy
smart.
that spun from it, that Jason has his show that started, that
that
doesn't mean he wouldn't be where he is, but I mean, it's cool that, you gave him that start. Like that's,
but so Jason Gregor in Edmonton. And then another guy that John gave his start is AJ Jakubek, who's the voice of the Ottawa Red Blacks.
Okay.
And the Ottawa soccer team. He works at the TSN station in Ottawa.
Right.
Dustin Nielsen was another guy that I believe got a little exposure there too. So John's he's a godfather of sports radio, particularly in Western Canada, and played a large role. And yeah, so it was 3 years. It wasn't long, but it was really
a lot of influence in 3 years though.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. And then, lo and behold, then I come down to Calgary and I end up working with Peter Marr and Mike Rogers. So I've been blessed. I've had to, I lost my father in 98. And John really helped fill a void. Pete really helped fill a void. So, and then it's funny, you were asking me about my social, and those guys had such those guys were always community conscious. Like it, but if it's good for my city, I want it. And Pete was always a guy, and Mike were always doing things, behind the scenes and working with charities. So that's where, somebody says, well, oh, you're this or you're that. I go, no, I'm just a product of my mentors. And my mentors were community-based, and my mentors were people who gave back. I'm so lucky. Like I say this all the time. I'm a big leadership guy. Like one of my pet projects is Leadership Day with Hockey Calgary. We did it for 3 years. 1,000 Bantam and Pee Wee kids come in for a day, and all we talk about is leadership and how to be a good teammate. I really believe that, Duke. And I would point out to a guy like yourself, it was fun. It was fun watching you. It was fun watching Michael Blaze at Battle in the Dome too. I like watching leaders. I like watching people who have to lead. And I'm a big believer in that. And to me, that comes from, hockey. And you were saying before about name dropping. I make the joke all the time. In 2019, I was honored to have my name called by the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame. And I am absolutely the single worst athlete ever to have their name called by the Alberta Sports Hall of Fame. There is no
I'm going to ask you to take that back a little bit, because I was telling a buddy of mine who is also a big talk radio fan, and he was very familiar with you and actually your career.
Yeah.
And he said, he goes, maybe ask you. He goes, but I heard he was actually a really good goalie at one time, that he'd tap on the pads.
Okay. So that's what I say to kids all the time. So there's two parts of that. One, I say, yes, I'm in the Hall of Fame, but I was never more than a house league hockey player. Never, ever. Right. Never played on a travel team, never played on a AAA, nothing. I was always, at the time, I was a Pee Wee D and Bantam D, and they don't even do that to kids anymore, right? Like, they don't say, oh, you're D. But that's all I was, but I loved it. And hockey gave me so much, sports gave me so much. So the legend of the talking goalie. So when I came to Calgary, I got to know Perry Barazan and Colin Patterson and Joel Otto and Lanny McDonald. And the Flames alumni is really incredible.
Well,
really
these guys,
incredible.
I mean, those would be the Flames that Joel Otto wore the C, I think, when I was in high school, right? He left here,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I came in 2003, they had this event called the SO 3-on-3 pond hockey tournament at the Corral. So they'd have these alumni from all across the league come in, and they play a 3-on-3 tournament. So John and I actually came down and broadcasted on anysportingtime.com. So we came down and we sat in the penalty box, and John and I broadcasted it, and it was a lot of fun. So that was that was our introduction to those guys. And then when I moved down there, at the time, one of the ways they publicized it was the Flames alumni would take on the media and play a game. And that was to kick off the SO 3-on-3.
Right.
So we were doing it down at Olympic Plaza, which is an outdoor ice across from City Hall in Calgary. And I got a call the week of from Perry Barazan. And he said, hey, Rob, you don't mind being the goalie? I said, no, I got equipment. I'm not a goalie, but I got equipment. Okay. Could you do play-by-play too? I said, what do you mean? well, if we got if we got a microphone, could you play goal and do play-by-play? Okay, I'll try it.
Gold.
So we're down there and they hooked me up with like a Garth Brooks mic over the ears.
Right.
It was wobbly, so they taped my head and I got hockey tape across my forehead and across this.
Super comfortable.
And now we're playing 3-on-3, media versus the Flames alumni. And Duke, I'm terrible, terrible, but I'm doing play-by-play, so I'm not paying attention.
Yeah, I was going to say, if someone's coming on a breakaway, what do you do?
I'm stopping stuff. So, and so everything that I stopped then became the greatest save in the history of hockey.
Of course,
so,
yeah, especially if you're commentating.
So here comes Joel Otto. He's in all alone. He's in the talking goalie. Right? Where did that come? Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for the talking goalie. And
that is
so it was fun. Like it was fun, and everybody was laughing, and I thought, oh, cool, okay. So we're taking off the equipment at downtown, and Perry and Colin, they come over and they go, Would you come to the tournament? Sure. What do you guys want me to do? Dress. What? Dress? No.
Right.
Yeah. We're not. You can do play-by-play in the penalty box, but dress. Which is, hey guys, there's the talking goalie.
Oh.
He's in the penalty box. Okay, but I'm not playing against NHL. No. That'll never happen. So they put me on a team, and I'm like, this is weird. Why would I be on a team? Like, it's just I'm more of a mascot than anything. So I'm on the Flames team, and trying to remember the name of the goalie. But anyway, one of the ex-Flames goalies, not Mike Vernon, but Mike Vernon's back, Rick Wamsley.
Oh, okay.
Rick Wamsley was there. So anyway, the Flames win their first two, and they're in the playoffs. And in the first round, I think they're playing Toronto. And I've been doing the games from the penalty box or whatever. And there's a bit of a break in the action. And Perry and Colin come over to me and go, Rick can't go. Rick can't go where? No. You don't understand. Rick can't play. I'm sorry, what? Rick can't play. I should have mentioned too that we were doing the games on the radio. So this was actually going over 960. So I was in the penalty box in gear, just doing play-by-play, and everybody loved it. Everybody loves the alumni. But we had nothing on a Saturday afternoon, so it's on the radio station. They go, no, you gotta play. You're insane if you think I'm playing. I ended up playing for the Flames alumni in the playoff game against Toronto. Mike Krushelnyski, the former Oiler, was playing for Toronto. I'll never forget this. It took them 5 minutes, Duke, to figure out what the hell was going on. Like, who is this goalie? And they were broadcasting it on the speakers. And like, it was amazing. And I'll never forget, like, Krushelnyski came in on a breakaway. Mike Krushelnyski in all alone, shoots. Oh, what a save. He goes around the world with it. How embarrassing is that for Krushelnyski? And he's like, what's going on? And we end up losing the game 6-5. And none of the players on the ice, except a couple of the Flames, knew what was going on. And that got a lot, everybody was talking about it. So the next year, during the lockout, I actually got put on a team. So I was on a team with Stu Grimson and a bunch of, some really high profile players.
Right.
I won 2 games. I won a game against Lanny McDonald. Whoa. Lanny McDonald, who must have been 52, 53 at the time, in this 3-on-3 game, down by 2 with less than 30 seconds to go, wires one, hits me directly on the knee through my pad, and I can still feel it today. Brian Sutter was playing for St. Louis. We were beating St. Louis. I'm down, covering up the puck, doing play-by-play, and Brian Sutter is chopping at my nuts. And I am telling the world that Brian Sutter is chopping at my nuts. So that's how the talking goalie started. And now I do the talking goalie now at golf events because I hate golf. So I will set up a tent and we'll take some sticks and stuff, and we charge people like, $20 for 5 shots. And I just sit there and I rag on them. I just rag because once I'm in your head, you can't beat me. If I get in your head, you're done. Funny. And so Mark Giordano, who just, as we're doing this today, is now a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh, he did get traded, hey?
He did. And Gio is just such a great guy, but he was a guest at the Hockey Alberta Golf Tournament in Canmore 8-9 years ago. Not that, maybe 7 years ago. And that was the first time I had done it at that tournament. And I stopped them all 5 shots, and somebody videotaped it and put it out there. So then it was on social media. So then he had to come back. And so then there was this thing for 3 years of Mark Giordano and the talking goalie, right? And I always got the better of him. Fast forward to 19, and the Flames are doing their super skills. It's a family thing where they do all the different events, and it's a great opportunity for the kids to come down and they can have a lot of fun and everything. Well, the Flames didn't want to use their goalie. So George Canyon, the country singer who sings the national anthem for the Flames, is also a goalie. So they said to George and I, how about you guys put on mics and you guys do the breakaway relays? And I'm like, I'm in. George is, what are you talking about? George, all you have to do is just talk. Well, you can, anyway. So George tried. George couldn't do it. He couldn't talk and stop the breakaway. Meanwhile, I'm carrying on a full-on conversation and having fun. And I'll say this only because I can, Gio's up and you can just see a big smile on Gio. And I'm the whole crowd, the whole building, the whole dome can hear me. Oh, it's a rivalry for the ages. The talking goalie and Gio. Here we go. Can the captain do it? Kenny. And he comes in on me, comes down the left side and he cranks a slapper and he shot it right in my glove. Ladies and gentlemen, look at what's here. And I drop it and the crowd goes nuts. And Gio was so good about it. So
that's
God bless your friend for asking, but that's kind of the talking goalie thing, which, on a wrestling podcast, it's all it is a character, right? Like all it is a character. And it's me turned up to 11.
I was going to say to your point earlier, just you turned up to 11.
That's right. And I get that a lot. Like, so did you go to college? Yep. Did you play? Nope. What junior team did you play? Didn't. Like it just people, you had to have, because you're in these situations and, the layperson can't be in these situations. Well, for me, the great equalizer was talking. If I could talk, I wasn't paying attention and I was just big enough, fat enough that things hit me.
I think you're being modest, but all right. All right. There's something I want to, so my buddy tells me the story again, my friend that his name's Bob. Sure. Shout out to you, Bob.
Shout out to Bob. Thanks, Bob.
Bob Ram is a big fan.
Perfect.
But he tells me the story about listening to talk radio one night. And I want to say it was old Billy Powers.
Yeah.
And the caller calls in and I don't believe there was a delay at this time. I believe
probably not
going straight through the switchboard.
Yeah.
And he asks who he's talking to. And the caller says, Smee, and tells Billy Powers to go F himself. Yeah. And so, and then they hang up and the guy called back and did it again. Yeah. And so it brought me, as we were talking about it the other day, I said, hey, I thought, obviously a guy that did so many broadcasts, so many call-ins as you, other than the Craig Conroy, it was like getting kicked in the nuts. What was the kind of the funniest or the end of, was there like an angry, crazy caller that was just like, holy shit.
Oh yeah.
That guy.
So there's a couple, Duke, and Bob, great question. So when the Flames lost to Tampa Bay in Game 7,
right,
that show was really hard to do. And it's not so much about me being a fan or anything like that. It's just, we had cultivated this, we just felt like we were all in it together. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
As soon as the game ended, they called overtime. I got to know these people. I got in trouble. Howie from Howie's Pizza would call. And I guess I was just immature, and I guess I was just being a dink. And, I was kind of screwing around because really I shouldn't do it. But Howie, is this Howie from Howie's Pizza? Yeah, it's Howie. Howie from Howie's Pizza, right? Where's Howie's Pizza again? And I was giving this guy free plugs. I was just giving him free plugs, right?
Oh, sure.
And then the sales department's like, I don't think you guys, you don't think you should be doing that. But after Game 7 against Tampa Bay, the Flames lose 2-1, and we're taking a call, and a guy calls in and he goes, Rob, I just, I'm listening to you. I'm driving tractor right now. I'm out in the field, and we're seeding right now, and I guess he wouldn't have been seeding in June, but he was doing something anyway.
Yeah.
And he goes, and there's this pause. And I'm like, did we lose him? And the producers in my ear going, no, he's there. And then you start hearing the sniffling, and he just broke down. Like, this team, that run had taken him through such a stretch in his life. He had family was sick, and or somebody in the family was sick and everything like that. And he was just bawling on the air as a guy our age, bawling on the air. Like, that's what sport meant. That one. Now, as it wore on, as we did more and more years, eventually it got to be too much because, and I often joked, I felt like, really our show should have been brought to you by Alberta Health Services because I was really doing a lot of counseling.
Right.
And you got a lot of angry phone calls and you got a lot of trade Jerome McGinley stuff, right? Like, and it was before social media, but I think it was really, you could see now that I look back at it, you could see why social media popped the way it did, because somehow we started in year 2 and 3 morphing into, but Rob, what if they gave up this, and this, and got that, and that? And, when they won, they were the greatest team ever. When they lost, blow it up. So you ended up getting into some really weird phone calls.
Yeah.
I ended up taking a call one night from a girl, and she asked a question about Stefan Yell, I believe it was. And I gave her an answer, and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked that." And I said, "No, it was a great question. No problem." Didn't think anything of it. 2 days later, got an email. Rob, I called overtime. I asked about Stefan Yell. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, "Don't worry about it." And I just sent an email. "Hey, great to hear from you," and everything. Well, a year later, we had the police involved. That was a stalker. She turned out to be a stalker. Oh, and, she got a hold of the phone number. She was calling and leaving death threats for me and for Gary Bettman and for Daryl Sutter and stuff like that. And so, it was a kind of an innocuous phone call that turned into something.
Wow.
So that was an unusual one. And I think this might be the first time actually I've ever talked about it. Yeah. So you did. And that, as it went on, it never really recaptured the fun of the first year. It just started to, and I can see where Billy would get frustrated. There's lots of people that said, "Oh, I was there one day when you called somebody an asshole," or, I heard you say the F word or whatever. And I honestly,
it was the fan that actually told Billy to go F himself.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But in the same token, like it got to the point where, particularly in bad stretches,
right,
losing streaks and stuff like that, it was just the same thing over and over and over and over again. And what I learned over time, and I apply to social media, is there's, it's easy to say, "Oh, they're just, they're crazies or the idiots," or they're not.
Yeah. What
they are is real fans, and they really think that they've come up with something that nobody else has thought about, that this is the first time it's surfaced, that if Daryl Sutter just hears this, or Ken King just heard this, that, if it was just said, like, and that's when really we started to see the erosion of, I think people didn't put media people on pedestals, but because they were the voice, you kind of said, well, we'll give some credibility to that. That was starting to erode. And it towards the end, I think it became personal at times for people.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did it. But when I was done overtime, which I think I stopped doing full-time calls in 0809, I was done. Like, and honestly, I would continue on the radio till 2018 on and off. I never went back to calls. I got to a point where I think it can take over the show. I think it became a crutch. And right. Really, I think it's not a matter of not caring about what the people think, but what we know about callers to radio stations at that time was they represented less than 1% of the listening audience. And there's always a danger of saying, "Well, I listened to overtime and I heard all of this, so that's what everybody thinks."
Right.
But having said that, Duke, there is no bigger compliment ever paid to me than I drove home and I sat in the driveway for an hour listening because I couldn't turn it off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think it's probably safe to say there's 99% more of those experiences, hopefully than, psychopaths phoning in and ranting, right?
Absolutely. But it's like social media. What do you believe? Right.
Yeah. Or
what do you believe?
What gets focused in on?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, it always makes me laugh. Like, people in particular, like, oh, if they, like say the Jerome McGinley thing, I'll be honest with you, I don't even like talking about it, because to me, it was like, for what Jerome McGinley did for the team and what he did for the city, and the way he carried himself and just the kind of the human being he simply was. Like, to me, it was like, do not breathe a word about trading Jerome McGinley unless Jerome McGinley comes to your office and asks to be traded.
Right.
Like, well, they can still get some value for him. That guy's earned a right to write his own ticket, and you let him do so. Like I was,
Right, but
and I'm a Habs fan, Rob. Like
yeah,
I'm
no,
a diehard. But it was just
I
like
get it,
Jerome
but
I was a big Jerome McGinley Dick rider. Like I
oh,
was a
and he
huge fan.
and he's, he really is. If you don't mind, I'll share another thing I've never said. But
No, please do.
when they probably one of the greatest personal honors I ever got was when the Flames announced that they were retiring his number and they were hosting a luncheon for season ticket holders. He asked for me to do the interview. So he asked for me to interview him at the event. So that meant the world to me. And I've interviewed Jerome a million times. And I think, he's just an incredible guy. He's all those things. He is really a recluse, like really does not seek the spotlight at all. It's very difficult to get him for things. He just doesn't, he's not doing what do they call it? The rubber chicken circuit. He's not that guy, right?
He's like a Sidney Crosby. Doesn't want to be painted up like a NASCAR and trotted around.
No, he doesn't. And so I have a lot of time for Jerome and his family and his country. I mean, he did so much for kids sport. We talked about the SO 3-on-3 tournament that funded kids sport. And when that ended after 10 years, it was Jerome McGinley who stepped in and donated, I think it was $1,200 a goal for every goal he scored. And that's what kept kids sport going too. So right, hey? There's a real connection there for me.
Now, I know this is going to sound funny, but you can ask my wife on this. I was a kid whose family couldn't afford to play sports. We could, people say like, "Oh, what'd you get into wrestling?" Because I didn't have to buy equipment. True story, right? I had runners, I had a pair of shorts, I could wrestle. And so my wife and I, when we did our wills, there's actually a lot of money in our will going to kids sport for that reason. It's a cause.
God bless you.
Yeah, God bless you. I don't normally say things like that because I never want people to think I'm being that guy. But that kids sport to me, people, if you're watching and you say, "Hey, like, what's an important thing?" Sports are, I didn't have a dad at home. I didn't have a decent father figure. So it was all my coaches and the people I was around in sports that got through. So to me, kids sport, it's such a important, and that and like school time lunch programs are my biggest, things.
Well, it's amazing. First of all, thank you. That's amazing. And that's really become my life's work in the last, decade or so is that, I think of all the kids for, especially with heroes and superheroes, we see a lot of kids who are on the outside looking in and it's not their fault. Like you can't blame them. And, one of the challenges we find, Duke, is that it's not easy to raise money for poor kids.
No.
Because a lot of times people look down their noses and go, well, if mom and dad just cleaned up their act, they'll take care of them.
Yeah, it's not makes bad decisions.
It's right. And that's not the way this works. And, we know, particularly with young girls, we know the value of sport, but we also know how difficult it is to keep girls engaged for many reasons. And, the pyramid in sport, when you talk about the pyramid, it's the participation, right? The participation's there, as a young kid, you get into the teenage years and that's when we start to lose it. And
for sure,
that's my life. That's quickly becoming my life's work, is making sure that those avenues stay open.
Yeah.
Again, I cannot stress this enough. I was a terrible athlete, but everything I owe to, to sport, right? That's where I learned everything.
I've had people like, were you good at amateur wrestling? No, I was dog shit, but I loved it. And it kept me out of the bars and strip clubs and gangs and whatever else. Right.
100%.
Yeah.
So to hear you say that's amazing. And I really thank you for that. And, that's where,
and hopefully you're not seeing this money for a while, to be honest.
No. We are not counting it in the 22-23 year.
Yeah. If I keep talking trash to my wife, who knows, but
no, but it does come back to mentorship. And I think this is another place where pro wrestling is, what I'd like to see is an Ava Lawless become a kid sport ambassador. Right. I'd like to see a Mo Jabari, become a kid sport ambassador. I'd like to see kids recognize the value. To your point, if you like it, we can't be looking down our noses at the options, right? We what I'd like some kids maybe in the Northeast or newcomers. Somebody's coming to Canada for the first time and they're in this incredible. The problem with us, and I mean this, me. The problem with me was we got to help newcomers. Here's hockey. come. And it's like,
Right.
whoa, slow down here a second. Like you got to make the connection, right? So
Yeah.
for somebody coming to this country, they're not necessarily going to go to curling. They're not necessarily going to go to hockey. They're going to go to what they know.
Yeah.
But the one thing, and we talk a lot about it, is there is a universality to the WWE. There is a universality to wrestling.
Yeah.
And I would like to see us, be able to present, some mentors in that space that go, look, this is something you want to do. Then why don't you try the track team? If this is something you want to do, why don't you try boxing? Why don't you try, again, give some background to this, try amateur wrestling, go out. Really what we need to be doing is creating mentors, right? That's how we win this game. We don't win this game by having a bunch of downtown bureaucrats or politicians, cut a check and go, here it is.
Yeah.
That's not how this works.
It's up to us to give back.
100%.
Yeah.
Pay it back. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's part, again, comes back to the Hitmen. On the ice, that's up to Steve Hamilton and Jeff Chenault to develop those kids. Off the ice, I want to put those players in the best possible position moving forward. That's why we expose them to charities. That's why we have ambassador programs.
Right.
That's why we take them and work with superheroes kids. I want them to understand that you've been given a gift, a gift to play junior hockey, a gift to chase it as a career and get an education. That's a gift, but you owe back to it. And that's one of the ththings that, when I look at somebody like yourself, you didn't need to be at that show, but you're there on March 5th. Yes, it's big for you, but you're also, you sit down with a Stephen Crow or you sit down with somebody else and there's legendary stories of those who have and those who haven't.
Well,
right?
And just as a lesson for people that want to help other people out, the only reason I ended up at that show was because Kurt couldn't originally he was having a hard time finding anyone to come to the press conference.
Yeah.
And so I just said, hey man, I'm not working right now because I'm in road construction. So I was off for the winter. I said, I'm not working. So if you just need somebody to show up, I can be down there and cut a quick promo for you. Yeah. Because that's all I'm good for anyways. So.
But you're not though, because you spent time with Reed Matthews, right? And you talked to Reed Matthews and you're there and you spent time with Gigi Ray and you're there. And, like I said, I watched you, I watched Andy, I watched, particularly I find Michael Richard Blaze fascinating because he's so quiet, but he's got a mind and he's a
quiet charisma
and he can communicate. Right. So, and that's mentorship. And, I want my players with the Hitmen to be mentors. One of the most proud things that we are is that, we're 4 years into superheroes and we're now having some of our older kids come and help our younger kids. And if you told people, 4 years ago, we're going to start a hockey program for kids with autism and Down syndrome. And in 4 years, we're going to get a bunch of them jobs. And then a bunch of them are going to help the next group. They would have looked at you like you had three eyes. Yeah. And they did. And they did. I starting that program was an eye opener. The doors that got shut in our face, not all of them, and not a lot of them, but a couple. Right. It was fascinating. But here we are 4 years later. And I so desperately believe in mentorship. And, I even look at, I'm one of the most proud things I am of Calgary Roughnecks and the Calgary Hitmen as of this moment right now is that I am the only guy. The rest of it are all young females in sports and they need those opportunities. And, this can lead us down to a hole.
I wanted to see if I could have the two Amy's that I was dealing with on the show because I was so impressed with all the ladies in the front office at the Hitmen. Yeah. You were the only man that I talked to that was in the front office there. It was all females and it was fantastic.
That's right. And I take a lot of pride in that, but it's also necessary because, I feel like Harner Ryan Singh was a CBC Cub reporter coming to cover the Flames when I first met him.
Right.
And now he's a pivotal voice on Sportsnet. And I know his story and I know how hard his story was. And I know that he's living in a moment of time right now and he's so important. And Cassie Campbell Pascal worked on Flames radio my first year and Hockey Night in Canada at the same time. So I've seen where we've come from, where we got to go. The biggest challenge is that when everybody starts screaming for inclusion and when everybody starts screaming for diversity and things, they can't check boxes. Like what I want to do is make sure that we're developing leaders, female leaders in sport who are ready to go. I don't want somebody to go, oh, we should put a woman in that job and just grab anybody. And I'm not saying anybody's doing that, but we have to be giving opportunities. We need young females to be given coaching jobs, and we need to, Sandra Priscina is a rock star that I worked with at 660 News and Sportsnet. And I swear she's going to be on, TSN, ESPN, one of them as a broadcaster, but she needs reps. It goes back. What do we talk about? We need reps. Yeah. And to me, it's the big thing is getting reps for these girls. And you saw how they worked. You saw how well organized Amy was and how organized. That's the opportunities that we need to be giving, females and people of color that have not been getting those opportunities in sports. So really proud of that part.
I've done a few of these things. I've done a few of these things, and working with yourself and the Amy's at the Hitmen was by far the most professional I've ever dealt with. Nothing was even close. Yeah. Right. Like I walk in, lady makes a phone call, you walk out, boom, we're there. Brett shows up. Like it was just like, holy cow. And then, down to the press conference, and Amy actually, when she came to get us, we had to cut a promo between periods.
Yeah.
And she came to get us, and we get up top, and she turns and she looks at me and she goes, I'm really sorry. I got you guys here really early. And I started laughing. I was like, you've obviously never dealt with wrestlers before. This is probably the best thing, because if we weren't here really early, we probably just would have missed it. So, they were so good, because working with wrestlers is a nightmare. Like they're my people. I love wrestlers, but let's be honest.
It's herding cats. It's herding cats.
There's not a lot of rocket surgeons in the locker room.
But I would tell you, Duke, that it's a lot of the people that we work, groups we work with and stuff. It's a different environment, right?
Right.
And it's a big building, and there's lots of nuance and stuff. But I'm covering the Roughnecks because a lady named Melissa Blades is on maternity leave, and she'll come back in the fall and take back over.
Okay.
And she's gonna, if she isn't, she's going to be one of the first VPs in our building. On the operations side and on the game side and stuff like that. We're very fortunate, and I'm a big believer in that. I don't say that for effect. I don't say that for kudos. It's just, to me, that's the role in life that I've chosen, and the role in life that is most important right now. And to find mentors, to promote mentorship, to promote leadership. And again, you're saying this on a wrestling podcast. Yes, I am. Because I think you find leadership, you find mentorship, you find examples of it there. I think you find it in business. I think it's truly, I'm never going to get paid $1 for shooting a puck, but I've been paid a lot of dollars for calling it and being around it and selling tickets for it and stuff like that. There's so many opportunities, and a lot of people look like me for a long, long, long time. And it needs to change. And the biggest challenge I think we have, and it goes back to kids sport, is we've got to keep that base. We got to keep people interested in sport. Whether people admit it or not, we're having to recruit in hockey for the first time ever, right? You have to recruit people for hockey.
Yeah. Yeah. The culture is changing, because quite frankly, for a long time, hockey didn't 100%. Have the best reputation. Right. So, and I think my niece, she's the niece of a wrestler. So that, me and her dad taught her that, wrestling's it. And there's others, do you like wrestling or do you hate sports, is kind of the attitude at our house. But so she wrestled a little bit, and to be honest with you, I had to have a conversation with her because she didn't seem interested. And, as her coach, felt like I was wasting my time. So I just kind of said, like, please don't feel because your dad and I did this for our lives that this is something you have to do with your life. Right. If you're not passionate about it, I don't want you to get hurt doing it. I don't want you wasting your time. Let's find something you're passionate about and do that. So with COVID, wrestling hasn't been a thing. So now she's gotten into hockey, and the joy she gets from hockey and the opportunities, cause she's 14, right? She just got her learner's license. So she's 14, maybe even 15. And she's a first year hockey player. And 20 years ago, that she wouldn't have got
No, you're 100%.
And to me, I'm so proud. I'm so happy that I can go watch my niece play hockey. Like, it's so cool.
And that's the other fight where we need to battle too, is that you're right. 10 years ago, you couldn't do that. You can't start hockey there. Those old rules, those old ways have got to go. They've got to go.
You don't start hockey when you're 5, don't bother.
No. And I talk about the pyramid, and I go all the way back to 1986. Dave King, coach of the Canada's Olympic team, was talking about the pyramid in hockey. We lose them at 13. We still lose them at 13.
Right.
Why do we lose them at 13? You can't go skiing with your family this weekend. You can't play football. You can't.
All consuming.
And it's early specialization. We could do a whole podcast. You want to get me going? let's talk about early specialization. That shit just drives me nuts. I cannot stand the thought of a parent saying, okay, we're going to focus on this and this only for the rest of you're robbing the kid.
Here's your
and there's
skates,
so
we'll see
much
you when you're 20.
So much data that shows that early specialization is damaging to kids. Let them play everything. I boxed, I played baseball, I played soccer, I played hockey. I mean, I tried basketball. I did it all badly, but I was better for it.
Well,
and to me, I would never take that away. Now, I had dancers. Neither of my kids played, and it drove me nuts. But it was not my decision to make. Right.
Well, and respect for you for not saying to your kids, like, you have to try it. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of parents will do that. Like, they'll put their kids, you have to try it.
No. The one wanted to try lacrosse. So we went to lacrosse. One wanted to try basketball. We tried basketball. The one played soccer probably for a couple of seasons. But you know what's crazy about that, Duke? You know, he played soccer. He just wanted to go on Saturday and play and kick the ball with his friends. And we got to an age, 13, where it went from $150 for 1 week to now we had to pay $500 for a talent evaluation fee. And I'm going, no, we're not. Yeah. There's no talent evaluation. The kid wants to play soccer. Like, we spend so much time trying to create professional athletes. And it's such a trope, but I say it all the time in hockey. My job is not to create an NHL player. It's to create 23 beer league players. That's all we should care about.
Retention in sport.
That's all we should care about.
Well, and a lifetime of health and fitness.
That's exactly it. But instead, you know, now you're going to get me spinning out of control, but I get into academies and super leagues and revenue generation and all of this. And that's where we come back to God bless you and your wife for your support of kids sport, because kids don't need that. They need to be part of a team. They need to lose to learn, or need to learn to lose. Yeah. We are taking this away from our kids. Like, I don't understand how we take today. Our superheroes kids played a game against the USC and Mount Royal Cougars. And up till now, they always beat the other teams. The teams were really good and they let them win. And we always won by 10 goals. Today, each of our teams lost by a goal. And it was the hardest thing these girls had to do was allow our teams or beat our teams. Like, they didn't want to do it. The game I was coaching, they scored 4 goals in the last 90 seconds because this team has to lose. And that was the parents were asking us. The kids they keep winning. They keep winning. They need to lose. They need to
taste that.
And it's so important, so important that we allow our children to fail.
It's one of those, I really appreciate a parent not wanting their children to feel the sting. Do you know what I mean? But
I do. Absolutely.
You can't enjoy the absolute highs without the absolute lows. Like, and I'm not articulate, right? But I'll just say, like, if you want to enjoy a slice of pizza, sometimes you got to eat a shit sandwich.
Yes. Yes.
You know, you have to know both sides. It's so Shakespearean, but it's the truth.
It really is. But we want to protect and we want to do this. But I got to tell you, you know, our teams took a loss for the first time. You never know it going in the dressing room. You don't know it. I've seen kids' teams lose tournaments and the parents are, you know, crying and screaming in the hallway. You go in, the music's going, the kids are dancing. That's not for effect. That's fact.
Yeah.
And we remove resiliency from our kids by protecting them. Yeah. I see it all the time at the highest levels of hockey. The kid's got a skills coach. He's got a mental strength coach or mental conditioning coach. He's got a strength and conditioning coach. And then they demand a trade when the team's not winning enough because little Johnny's not, you know, he's too good for this. You're ruining little Johnny. You're ruining. You're ruining.
Well, actually, I had Jesse and JD from CJ92 on this podcast a while ago.
Oh,
and I've developed a
brilliant.
I've developed a great rapport with those guys. Are so. I mean, the fact that they would give me their time, and I'm so flattered when guys like you will give me your time. And Jesse's just signed up to be his kid's softball coach, or his kids, I think he's 9, getting his first year of Little League, and they've asked him to coach. And he said, what should I expect? So I called in and we were talking, and I said, it's the most rewarding thing in the world to watch the light come on a kid. But I said, be prepared, because the blessing that is, the other side of that is every parent thinks their kid's going to be like the next Babe Ruth. Yeah. So, be prepared that, their kids aren't playing enough. You should have them playing at first, not second, center field, not left. Like, so, once you get by that, and it's unfortunate because it's what stops, I think, a lot of athletes from giving back, is especially athletes our age that have seen a lot of, stereotypical, and it's not just hockey. Those parents are in every sport, what I mean?
Oh yeah. Try dance.
Oh, I can only
We
imagine
owned a
what
dance
dance
studio
must
for
be
6
like.
years in Edmonton. And
Right.
I'll tell you, I could tell you a story. You know, everybody wants to pile on and shit on hockey all the time.
Yeah.
It's not. You're absolutely right. You know, go talk to John O'Sullivan, Changing Game Project in Portland. He'll tell you about soccer parents.
Yeah.
It's parents. It's that need to protect. It's that need to protect, and we cannot release them. You know, Sheldon Kennedy, and here I am name dropping, but you know, Sheldon Kennedy and the Respect Group. You know, they've done the Respect in Sport program, and everybody, oh well, you know, why do I have to take this? Why is it mandatory? I get it. I've taken Respect in Sport twice. I've taken Respect in the Workplace. You know, it's good. But it was interesting talking to him that the single most impactful moment in a young athlete's life, single most impactful moment, ride home, the ride home.
Yeah.
And you know what? As soon as he said it, it's like the light goes on. Geez, yeah, I remember you get into the car. What's dad going to say? Right. Like,
Yeah.
And I was lucky. My dad was really,
Because they care what the coach says, but.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, I talk to young athletes and I talk to people and I see it in junior, the kids that's scared of their dads. They just don't want to be around their dads. They don't want to be around. It's that ride home. And, you know, if one thing comes out of this and somebody hears this, don't critique, love, just love. Just tell them you love watching them play. Just telling them how proud of them you are. That's the only thing that matters. It really is. The coach will get the rest of it. If you think you're going to teach a kid how to complete a crossover or how to throw a pass or whatever by yelling at them or being critical in the vehicle, you're misguided. But what you can do is set them up for a lifetime of sport by telling them how proud of them you are. It's amazing, isn't it?
No, and Rob, that I can articulate. And I always say, like, parents, if you want to coach, get out of the stands, get behind the bench. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But I think your way is better. Your way. Don't coach if that's not your thing. Just love
referee
your kid.
Though.
Yeah,
referee,
but love your kid. You know, actually,
we need referees.
I can't believe. I'm so glad that parents aren't allowed to talk to the referees anymore.
That's ridiculous. I told you about my son. Like he played and he played 6-on-6 soccer. And we had a 14-year-old girl officiating our game. And I watched one of the numbskull parents go after her. And I went after him. Like, no, that does not. No, these kids are out. Like it's absolutely insanity. Like there are times, Duke, where I just think that we're going to implode. Like the way you see the videos of the fathers beating up or screaming at the refs or whatever.
Yeah, fight.
But I do believe in good. I see our superheroes program. I see other programs.
It's changing
for all.
It's changing.
There's reason to be optimistic.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I always, my wife and I were just talking about something today. And one thing I hammer on constantly is I have to change the attitude before I can change the behavior. And the attitude is changing. So now we're working on behavior.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one kind of funny question. This is my own. One of the most infamous for me, one of my favorite blooper reels of all time is the time Roger Millions used an extreme swear word on camera. Were you around Sportsnet when that happened?
No, so
because I've always wondered, like, what was the reaction in the office when that happened?
That was a mess. So Roger, if you're talking about the one, and I haven't talked to Roger in years, so if he sees me here and this is the first, I can imagine he'd be a little pissed at me. But poor Roger got hung out to dry. He was I mentioned before I was doing pre and post, so it was a playoff game in Chicago. I was at Shank South in Calgary because that's where we did our radio games from. And Roger was on the biggest screen they had there. And he did a stand-up from outside the rink. And all of a sudden he dropped the word.
Yeah.
And it's like, there was nobody in Shanks. There might've been 10 of us because it was like 4:00 in the afternoon. It was the first run of their Sports Central.
Oh, okay.
And it should have never made it to air. It should have never made it to air. They were in a hurry. They sent it in. They didn't watch it in Toronto. They just shoved it on the air and it happened. And I really do feel for Roger.
I do. Like, it's one of those, I'll never forget it. Cause I can remember just like my mom.
And he won't either.
Did he just say that on TV?
Yeah. One of the neat things about Roger was that, when that happened to other people, he would reach out. Right. There'd be a couple of, and it wasn't sports. I mean, news, you'd see it every once, because then it became not the early part, but when social media started, the viral pieces, there's a lot of those on viral.
Right.
And he would reach out, but he got completely sewered. It should have never made it to air. It was a rush job. And then the problem with being front facing is you're front faced, right? You know, I say all the time, I get a lot of credit for what I do with the Hitmen, but it all belongs to the shoulders of the ladies behind me. They're the one. I'm front facing.
Yeah.
But if there's, you know, if we mess up, I'll be front facing. Yeah. And, you know, I'll tell you not to deflect from this.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a story that has never seen the light of day. We were in the Hot Stove Lounge one day talking. This was just before I retired. Colin Patterson and Perry Barzan and Jamie McCowan were in the Hot Stove Lounge, and we're talking, and we took a commercial break, and they said, "Hey, can we talk about the building? You know, everybody's talking about the building, Calgary Next. Can we talk about it?" Sure. So they got on there and they were, you know, really doing a great job of making the case. And, you know, I'm frustrated by the whole thing because we need a building and everything. And then Mayor Nenshi and Ken King were going at it and everything. And they said, they just stopped and they looked at me and they go, "Rob, what do you think?"
Oh.
Huh? Well, what do you think about it? And I was like, you know what? Let's just get Ken King and Nenshi in a room and they can, you know, measure who's biggest and we get over this because I'm tired of, you know, and I'm like, and like they're laughing and I'm like, oh my God, did I just say we should have a, oh boy. Anyway, all right, we'll take a break and come back. Yeah, we'll take a break and come back. I throw to commercial and now I'm devastated because I just said the mayor of Calgary and the president of the CSEC should measure their, anyway.
Yeah. And
I'm like, so I hit the talk back and I go to my producer. I go, "Is the phone ringing yet?" Nothing. "Is the phone ringing yet?" Nothing. "Are you there?" Nothing. And I'm like, oh boy, he's getting lit up. Somebody's called the station line. I'm in trouble. I'm going to get fired. Whole 9 yards. 2 minutes later, "Rob, are you there?" "Yeah." "Where'd you go?" "What? You guys have been off the air for 15 minutes. So I really sewered myself and it was embarrassing. I was embarrassed. Never made it there. Never made it there. I caught such a break.
Yeah.
That we never dropped, Duke. We never dropped. But that day, the good Lord was on my shoulder and we dropped. So for Roger, he deserves so much better than that. He got sewered on that.
Well, a solid broadcaster, right? Like, I mean, geez,
yeah,
spend as much time in front of a camera.
No, and it hurt him. It hurt him. And you can imagine why, right? Because you become the butt of jokes. Like, you know, it's funny when you're setting that one up. I thought you were going to say about me in Columbus and the gun goes off. So if you Google Rob Kerr in Columbus, there's an opening to a Flames game in which Charlie Simmer and I are there talking, and they have that stupid cannon in Columbus, and the Blue Jackets are coming out, and you could just see I'm talking to Charlie, and I'm like, it's coming, and then bang, and I jump up, and like Charlie stops. I go, "The gun went off." Well, the morning show here runs it all the time. Of course, I get it all. I'll be out in the public and people come up to me, "Hey, the gun goes off." And it's not, trust me, it is not the same to what Roger went through. Mine was my own mistake and my own doing. Yeah. But you live with it and you always live with it. That's the reality. So I'm cool with it. I just felt Roger deserved better in that situation. He really did.
It's one of those things, like, it's always, the reason I bring it up is, I mean, of course we all have a laugh and it's a sport, guys, but it's always one, like, I mean, think of all the sports and bloopers I've seen in my life. I'm 49 years old, but that one's always stuck with me because it's like, that poor bastard, you know, I've always really felt
I mean, I'm not speaking for Roger. I'm just speaking for myself now. I accepted it. It was kind of like when we talked about social media at the beginning. You know, while I was in the media, I accepted that I was probably going to lose my job because of something I would post. It just seemed like that's the way you saw ESPN guys getting into trouble. You saw other people getting in trouble. You know, Greg Zahn got into trouble. There's just things that get you into trouble, right? With when you're front facing like that. And I think you kind of have to accept
problem with, though. I think we got to give some of our people in media a little wiggle room. Not that, I mean, you know, obviously there's within reason, but I think if I spend as much, you know, think of how many hours you've spent talking.
I talked, I did it one time during the NHL season. I was talking over 16 hours a week.
Right.
That's not 16 hours. That was just talking in a row. add commercials and everything into that, because I was doing the 5 days a week. I was doing the pre and the post, and I was doing overtime. I was talking for 16 hours a week.
Yeah. So when you do that, and especially if some of that's opinion, you're going to, at some point in those time, you've probably stepped in shit and didn't realize it. And by today's standard, if somebody finds some of that footage, they're going to try and hang you over it. And that's kind of a problem for me.
Yeah, I guess you're alluding kind of the cancel culture component.
Yeah, and we could do a whole show on that, but I just feel bad about, somebody finds something you or Roger Million said 10, 15 years ago and want to hold your feet to the fire.
Yeah, I mean, I had a reason. Like I did a morning show run at the end of August, and it was kind of going to be my last one because I had the 2 teams coming up, and I just wasn't going to work over the winter, and things were changing. So it really felt like to me, since I retired, I'd go in for a week here, 3 days here, whatever. So I did one last run, and we were starting to get into the anti-vax and the horse stuff and all that stuff, and I just, at the end of the show, I said, hey, listen, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. I've loved every minute of it. Now, stupid people, stop being stupid. Yeah. All right. Thanks again. And didn't think anything of it. That's all I said. Stupid people, stop being stupid.
Yeah.
And I did the show here, right where I was doing this. So I had to go to work. So that was 9:00, drove in 9:30, 9:35, customer service forwards me an email that somebody had sent to the Calgary Flames, mad at me for saying, stop being stupid. So again, I'm not sure what
but damn you for telling me not to be so.
Right. And I've had incidents like that. I gave a talk out in Airdrie one time, and, I started talking about leadership. And at the time, Trump was kind of just, that whole presidency was kind of in its infancy or in the middle of it. And to me, if for no other reason, it was just poor leadership. Like I can't stand poor leaders.
Yeah.
And, I have a line that everybody repeats all the time. It's kind of a Rob Kerr drinking game. We have too many managers. We don't have enough leaders.
Yes.
And I had done this. I'd done this talk in Airdrie, and I just talked about leadership. And the mayor of Airdrie was there, and I made the mistake of saying, politicians, like we don't need managers. We need leaders. And a guy was leaving the same time I was leaving. He said, the mayor was in there. Yeah. Don't you care? And I go, but what? He goes, well, you were pretty hard on politicians. And I said what I said. Next day, customer service letter, please let John Bean know. I was at an event. Rob Kerr was insulting to politicians and insulted the mayor of Airdrie and stuff like that. That's just comes with the territory. People hear what they want to hear. People say what they want to say. I have offended people. Absolutely, I have offended people. I think the only thing that I've ever had kind of going for me is I don't think I've ever said things for effect without saying, hey guys, I'm about to say something for effect.
Right.
Like I hated Jim Rome. Jim Rome was the lead into my show, and I hated Jim Rome.
Right.
Love what he did. Get it. Guys like that help the business and stuff like that.
One of my favorite highlights ever, though, is when what's his name? Go ahead, call me Chris Everett one more time.
Yeah, exactly. No, with Jim Everett. Yeah. No, but it's the hot take mentality. And now you've got, well, not now, but the Stephen A. Smiths, and then they make the whole thing about shouting at everybody. That's when I kind of knew I was down at the end of the rope. Like I don't enjoy sports as much as I used to. I just don't, because it seems like we're all armchair general managers and it's all snark.
Yeah.
And, we talked about a trade happened today. Well, then you got to go through the litany of people with opinions on the trade and this and that. I'm watching probably the best Flames team I've ever seen in the regular season up close.
Right.
And when they don't win, it's just like, what are you like? They get piled on.
Blow it up.
And I get that. Like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be critical or you shouldn't have, but it's just, the world doesn't have fun anymore, right? Like sports is supposed to be fun.
One of the cool but terrible experience I had.
Yeah.
Was my brother bleeds football. Like he bleeds football.
Yeah.
And his buddy that he had season tickets with for years, for whatever reason, couldn't go one year. So I went in and thought, it'd be a great time to go to the Stamps games with my brother, spend time together. So I buy the 9-game pack and away we go. And of course, in a season ticket area, you're sitting around with a lot of other season ticket holders. Yeah. And there's these 2 women in particular. And what I'm saying has nothing to do with being women other than the very end of what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
So all fans feel because they buy a ticket, they're an expert on the game. And so as we're watching, these ladies are yelling at the quarterback, throw the ball, do this, do that, oh, this player should have done this, this player should have done that. And I looked at my brother and I said, do you think either of these two women has ever taken a fucking snap? You know what I mean? And it had nothing to do with the fact in the story, they happen to be women. But yeah. I bet there's a lot of fans sitting in the stands that have never taken a snap, that have all kinds of why didn't he throw the football? And that's what ruins pro sports.
Yeah, I guess so. I do have to come back and kind of defend the kingdom a little bit in the sense that, but because I haven't been a politician doesn't mean I can't be critical of a politician, right?
That's fair.
And I hate brushing all fans, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And to me, when I talk about, it's mostly fed by social, right? If I didn't two screen things, if I'm not watching a hockey game and following along on Twitter, I'd probably be a much bigger fan. my fault, right? Yeah. I just think that, I worry that we don't have fun. Like we need to have, I cannot post enough pictures of the Savannah Bananas baseball team because they get it. And I'm not saying all sports should be that, but I'll give you an example. To me, the highlight of the Western Hockey League season, the highlight of the Calgary Hitmen season was Sheik Shabazz's promo in the second intermission at our game, wearing the Oil King jersey and 5,000 fans booing.
Yeah.
That's fun. That was fun. That's fun. And that's one of the things I like the most about the two teams that I work with. I don't think everybody's armchair general manager. Certainly the Roughnecks, they aren't. Those fans are incredible. They're incredible.
I can honestly say that I've never seen a social media post knocking the Roughnecks or their management or a trade that's happened. The truth is, and the same for the Hitmen for that matter.
It's a different animal.
I don't want to just say Flames fans, but
it's hockey. I mean, my God, like I look at Vancouver and I wonder how they do it. I feel sometimes for my friends up in Edmonton and how they do it. And
as a Montreal Canadiens fan, I can tell you there's no worst hockey. The worst hockey fans in the whole world are Montreal fans.
But I mean, we're a couple hours into this, but I go back to my comment earlier about, Sopranos or Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or whatever. Though, you get the same. It's a society thing. It's not fans. It's a society thing. We live in a society right now that is just hyper sensitive and hyper
opinionated.
Opinionated for the lack of a better term. And we've given license to that, right? Social media has given license to that. When I was on 960 in 2003, 2004, I was a select number of people that could talk to the mass audience about a topic.
Right.
You just couldn't do it. Now everybody can do it. And everybody does do it. And I think we've lost the plot a little bit. Right. Just as a society, I think we've lost again, it comes back to what I read on Twitter isn't actually everything. Right. Yes. I don't, we could get onto a whole call. I think it's been high. I think politics. This is as far as I'll go on this topic, dude.
Okay.
I think politics has been blended into sports now, where we're picking sides and cheering in the same way we would support a political party as we do a team, and that's not right. I hate
you because of the sweater you wear.
That's right, and that's so. When I hear things like "own the libs" or conservative this or whatever, no. Those are fringes, right? Those are fringes. It's the same thing. You're a Montreal Canadiens fan, and you think. I know a lot of Canadiens fans. There's lots of good Canadian fans. Do I think there's crazy Canadian fans? Sure, I do. But I think there's crazy Browns fans. I think there's crazy Raptor fans. There's
just Riders fans are in a league all on their own.
Well, they are and they aren't. But
for me, they're the best fans in professional sports.
I feel sorry for Rough Rider fans because they care more than most other teams' fan bases do, and it's fans are, again, they're so necessary and they're so important. So I feel a little weird about cracking on them. And it's not that, it's just an observation that as a society
none of us
now,
have anything, right? There's nothing to talk about without the fans. There's no sport.
That's right. But it's okay to have fun. And, when I talk about that's why I like Lanny McDonald stories. And that's why I like, Wayne Gretzky stories. And that's why I like, Owen Hart stories and stuff like that. Like the guys that have come in the past, you're allowed to talk about them. You're allowed to talk about them as people and their, the way you were talking about Jerome McGinley. It's very difficult for me to open a conversation today and talk about Johnny Gaudreau without somebody going, yeah, but did you see his last shift? Or, I wish, Michael Backlund, for instance, with the Calgary Flames, this is an incredible guy. This is a really incredible guy.
Well, and how long has he been with the organization? Like 12, 13 years? It seems like.
Well, I remember I interviewed him before he got drafted and after he got drafted in Columbus. It's incredible. I was looking for the audio here. But his sister was a professional floorball player in Sweden. Like, I love those stories.
Yeah.
But we don't seem to have time for those anymore. We want to know about who we're getting traded. And the one thing that really bothers me about professional sports is it seems like we have a segment of fans now that aren't concerned about today. They just want to worry about tomorrow, constantly move the horizon, constantly. What draft picks can we get? What picks can we get? I listened to Alex Anthopoulos on a podcast after the Braves won, and he talked about, making his trades and going all in. And I look at the teams as the NHL trade deadline was approaching. I look at it differently now. I really do. As somebody who sells tickets, as somebody who's on that side, like, it's so hard to win. Like, nobody appreciates how hard it is to win.
Yeah.
And when you get a chance, you owe it to everybody. Go all in, don't worry about the horizon. I mean, you have to a certain extent. You know what I'm saying?
No, but
that's
right.
that's the part that let's have some fun with this. Let's believe it's okay.
Well, and that's Anthopoulos. That's his mentality, right? I remember when he left the Blue Jays and the second guy came in, he kind of said, like, the draft pick cupboard's bare. Yeah, because you went all in.
100%.
You went after it, and look how far they went.
Yeah, 100%. But again, we have a society that doesn't like failure, right? And I often said this, and I could never properly articulate it, dude. We in sports, the collective we, don't understand how important losing is, because losing makes everything else better.
Yeah, man.
And there's degrees of losing, and there's constant losing, and it ain't fun to lose. But let me tell you, in 2003, for a team that had not made the playoffs in 7 years, and they win something, the Flames might win the Stanley Cup this year. Let's just say they do.
They're in the
It
hunt.
still won't quite be the same because of all of the losing that came. Now, there hasn't been a lot of winning since, but there's been playoffs. But that team came out of nowhere and did something nobody expected to. The 06 Oilers came out of nowhere, did something nobody expected, right?
No, you're right.
That, to me, we never fully understand how important losing it is in all of this. And I'm not trying to glorify it. I'm just saying it's a driver. Yeah. It's an absolute driver.
Yep.
And when you lose a long time, it makes everything else. It's your analogy about pizza. Yeah. It's exactly what it is. And, the one person that drives me nuts is the person who just wants to look at the horizon and watch the horizon move. You do in sports, you need to live in the moment every once in a while.
Well, you need to do, if you want to be prepared today, you got to live in, like, if you want to prepare for the future, you have to prepare for the future, but you have to know what's going on today.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And I think that gets lost.
For sure.
On that note, man, we're, like you said, you're a couple hours in. I'm going to let you
That's it
out of here. Yeah, that's it. The truth is, Rob, you're such an interesting guy. We could probably, I could probably just sit and chat with you all day.
Oh, I appreciate it. I love it. It's, to me, like I say, I'm very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about what we talked about here, obviously. But I love guys like you. I love the history that you bring. And I love the fact that you stick your neck out and you do a podcast. Again, I'll say it again. I do not believe you suck. I know people who do, and I don't believe you do, but I love this stuff. To me, the podcasts have been an incredible, and I would end it with this. I don't think, I might be wrong on this. I don't think any other industry, sport, or anything has either been, it depends on how you look at it, I think benefited from podcasts more than wrestling. I really don't.
Right. Yeah.
I think if guys like Harley Race,
the entire wrestling industry, the internet, like to your point, when you realized there was wrestling on the internet, when I figured out there was wrestling on the internet, it was probably only because I clicked off the porn site and found something by accident.
Sure. But I mean, it's funny because it was such a protected, I dabbled in magic when I was a teenager. And by that, I mean, I had a friend who did it and I just was the mouthpiece, but there's always that magician's code. You never tell a secret. And it always felt the same way in wrestling. And I would imagine that a Harley Race or a Les Thatcher or a Stu Hart or somebody would roll over in their grave with all these podcasts now and all of that. But on the same token, for me, it's really allowed me to go back and understand my youth better. It really goes, through the pandemic, one of the founding members of the CDC, Brent Gibbs, and I, every Saturday morning, we would FaceTime each other and watch 2 episodes of Stampede Wrestling on in chronological order and we just talk. And I mean, I watched it in real time in my youth, and now watching it back and knowing what I know, it's just a different experience.
And you watch it so much differently. Oh,
sure you do. And the other thing are those Madison Square Garden shows. I watched, you probably know both of them, but there's a Madison Square Garden show that is your 3 matches in. The second match is Scotty McGee and Les Thornton, and it's a 22-minute match, and they never leave their feet.
Yeah.
The next match is the British Bulldogs versus the Hart Foundation with the blue stripe down the black.
Right. Yeah, the powder blue.
Just got there, and it's not the same thing. It's in the same ring, but it's not the same thing. And that crowd is going nuts. And I've gone back and I watched it and I watched and I watched it. And it's a myopic view because I'm a big Stampede fan, but that's such a that to me was a transformational moment, because that really pushed those guys, the Iron Mike Sharps and all those guys, it really put them out because they just couldn't work at this speed. They couldn't work at the same rate. They couldn't do the things. And again, there was this great sense of pride that these guys were from Calgary. These guys were from Alberta, and they'd gone to the most holy of all shrines, and they just set it on fire.
Yeah.
Like that stuff. It's so neat to go back and see that and live that. And, it informs my youth so much more, right? Like that's been the gift. There's no gifts in the pandemic, but the one gift has been spending time with Brett and Brent and watching and learning and again, just kind of opening my mind to everything. It's really been brilliant.
Now, and the last thing before we go, I do want to touch on, especially, is tell us about the Cool Dads Club. This is something that I think is extremely important. And I want to, before we go off the air, I want to talk about it.
So the Cool Dads Club, again, it's the CDC is what it is. So if you go back to the original Battle in the Dome, we went to a PWA house show at the beginning of October. The original Bret Hart night was on November 2nd of 2019. So I had met Kurt Sorokin once. And then I called him and I said, look, I have access to a video crew. We want to do this game. We want to do this wrestling. I don't think it's good enough just to do the wrestling. I think, I'd like to do some content and build a storyline. So I said to him, can I come and get beat up? And I can only imagine, Duke, you promoted and you've been around long enough, the amount of people on the outside who go, oh, I want to be part of this, right? Like I think I can be part of this. And I know I'm an interloper and I know I'm asking a lot, but at the time I had this vision of, well, at least they'll give us some content. We can build some stuff up into the show. So I came to that show and met Kurt. And then I met Michael Allen, Richard Clark, and I met Mo Jabari, and Michael Blaze was there. And I met these guys for the first time. And I kind of said to them, this is what we want to do, guys. And you could tell, like, who is this guy? Why are we doing this? Right. So basically I brought a hockey stick with a Calgary Hitmen flag on it. And I said, go ahead and hit me with this. And they're looking at me really kind of crazy. And I give Michael Allen, Richard Clark all the credit in the world. He said, okay. So we went in the ring.
Honestly, I love that kid.
Oh, he's and it's way. I'm really disappointed he wasn't able to join us this year, but he'll be back.
I really love that guy.
So before doors open, they took me into the ring and they said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then they said, would you take Green Mist? I said, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Would you take a punch? Yes, I will. And can we break this hockey stick over your back? Of course you can. So I just kept saying yes. Yeah. So comes to the part of the show, halftime or the intermission, and Kurt goes in, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special announcement, coming up on, Saturday, November 2nd, we're going to be at the Saddle Dome. Please welcome Rob Kerr from the Calgary Hitmen. So I come out, I've got the flag, I'm wearing a Hitman 25th anniversary jersey. I'm playing it up. Now I'm in the ring for the first time. So I'm running the ropes and I'm having a little fun. And, Kurt says, okay, what are we here to do? Well, we're going to celebrate Bret Hart. And I said, I want everybody here to be there on Saturday, November 2nd, when we celebrate the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Well, everybody's chanting it back at me, right? So now, I mean, everything they say about wrestling crowds is absolutely, I'm living it in the moment. Well, out comes Colton Kelly, and out comes Michael Allen, Richard Clark, and out comes the manager, and they come in the ring.
I'm assuming that's Thaddeus Archer with his
no, it wasn't. It was the young man from Japan.
Oh, Takeshi, Dr. Kyoto.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
One of my
Dr. Kyoto came
well.
Yeah. And he was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh, he's the best.
Michael Allen, Richard Clark grabs my glasses, which I had gotten at the dollar store, and he breaks them. So he starts running me down.
That bully.
Well, I grabbed the microphone, and of course, Sheik gave me some really good advice. He said, before you go out there, he says, slow down, because you're going to go out there. You're going to want to go a million miles. Slow down. So I didn't slow down. I grabbed the mic, and I'm ripped. I look at, Kofi Kingston. What are you, some sort of, or a Kofi, at Mo Jabari? Are you some sort of Kofi Kingston wannabe? And you big walking carpet, what millennial, what? You pick a name, Michael Allen, Richard Clark. Come on, why don't you just call yourself Donnie or something? So I ripped hard on him. I went a little too quick.
That's funny.
Well, then Mo spins me around and punches me. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be missed punch stick, but Mo jumps early. So I get punched. I go down, and I'm like, he hit me. And then I come up, then I get the miss, then I go down. And then I'm down, and I can hear two guys come into the ring. I believe it was Richard or Michael Blaze and Sheik. Anyway, I'm down. So the three get the better of the two. They're down. And now Kurt's in my ear. He goes, okay, get up to your knees. So I get up to my knees, and then Michael Allen, Richard Clark hits me with the hockey stick.
Oh,
and it breaks, and I go down, and I can still feel it right across my back today.
Yeah.
So I get hauled out. So anyway, we created this. We had a cameraman from CSEC there. We put it out. So there's this great 90 seconds of Rob Kerr getting his ass kicked. Nice. So then we did a press conference, just like we did this time. And then Mo's there. So Mo breaks another set of glasses. Now we got to tear apart. So we've got all this great video, right? So we use that to build up the first event. So then fast forward to last July, and we're still in the pandemic. We're hoping to start in the fall, but if we start in the fall, we want to do the event. Well, I got a buddy of mine down in Stockton running the Stockton Heat, and he's asking me about promos. And I said, oh, I'll show you one. So I sent him the video of me getting my ass kicked. And I'm just sitting on my porch going, you know what? It's 9:30 on a Thursday night. I'm just going to throw this out there. So I throw the video up, and I go, hey, here's a blast from the past. Well, 90 seconds later, Michael Allen, Richard Clark tweets, I remember that old man, and he's just like full on promo mode. So the next hour is me firing at him, Thaddeus gets in the middle, and all of a sudden, now we got all of these, everybody's in on this. Well, the next day I go into work, and everybody's seen it. Like they're insane. Like, are you? And that's at the point where Michael Allen, Richard Clark goes, okay, you want a title shot? I'll give you a title shot. You can, absolutely. Right. So I grabbed the screenshot of that, and I'm like, people bought it. Like, here we are in July for the Calgary Hitmen, who were doing nothing. Yeah. People are calling, going, when can we get tickets? When is this? Nice. So it really, so I'm out for a run, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so how do we move this storyline forward? And I go, well, you know what? Brent Gibbs, who I've mentioned, and Jason Kelly's another friend of mine at CSEC. We're the same guys who were in high school sitting at the library table debating the merits of the WWF and Stampede. Right. Well, we're 50 years old now. So, I want them to have this experience. And I think the best way to do is maybe form a faction. Oh, well, we'll call it the CDC, like that. CDC popped in my head. And the next thing came in, we're Heartbreakers, Leg Breakers, and we're something else. So I had the T-shirt right away. Like I literally had the T-shirt.
Leg Breakers, and get off my lawn.
Yeah, that was Brent. When I came up with the third thing, he goes, no, we got to get off my lawn. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we had the T-shirt. So anyway, I sent those guys an email the next day, and I said, this is how it's going to work. We're going to form a faction. Because I missed one little element. So when Battle in the Dome happened, we were building up that we got a mask made with the Hitman. We call it the Hitman Avenger. So what happened was Brian McGrattan was a friend of mine, former Flame. We were going to get the Hitman Avenger was going to get, be the special guest. While really all along we wanted Brian McGrattan. So we got Brian McGrattan to be the special guest enforcer. But on the 2nd of November of 2019, we had a battle royal in the event. And the guys came to me. It was really cool. And they said, "Do you want to be in the battle royal?" I said, "Sure." And they said, "You're first out." And I said, "Absolutely, I'm the first out." Like, that's yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So I put on the mask and put on the jersey and, was about the middle guy in. And so waited for everybody else, bell rung. And then the two guys dumped me over and I was done. But I lived the dream, right? Yeah. I was in a wrestling match. I could say I competed in a battle royal. So now we're running, we got the CDC ID. And I said, okay, what if we build a storyline around, okay, so now Michael Allen Richard Clark has offered the title shot. So we'll give it to the Hitman Avenger and we'll just do the bait and switch. We'll play, he'll think in July, we came up with what we ran in March. We came up there.
Yeah.
And I said, the way we can get some heat with this is we want to do something for Brett, which is the prostate cancer center. Let's do the Cool Dads Club, which works perfect for that. Yeah. They loved it. It was just one of those things. And then we were able to roll it in and really kind of build it from there. And I've got a couple other ideas. Actually, I'm going to try and turn it into a service club, if I'm being perfectly honest. But it just kind of built. And again, it was so exciting how much people in the office loved it. And again, brought them back to their youth. And if you saw the event, if you go and watch the event, you'll see we had marched about 12, 15 of us out in t-shirts, and we did the swerve that we wanted to do. And now it gives us, with my head getting shaved and everything, that now gives us content on our side to build to the third event. Right. 100%. And the CDC will be able to keep it alive. And I've got some ideas that we're going to do some events between now and then just to kind of keep that ball rolling. But it now gives us this, our own kind of brand, if you will, for this. So it was purely organic and, it kind of lucked into everything.
Which all the best stuff is just purely organic. I think, and like even how you came up with the name, a lot of people they think you'll spend hours agonizing over these names. Sometimes it's like, no, usually the first one that comes to you is the winner.
100%.
Very often.
100%. No, I can go back and dig up the email that I sent to JK and Brent, and everything I wrote in a July night is exactly what we did.
Yeah.
We adjusted on the fly in a few things, but and that's when the decision became that, okay, I'm not getting a haircut, and I grew the hair, and I never said anything to Kurt until probably December, maybe November. And I said, this is what I'm thinking. And again, yes, the ego part, it's a cool angle and I really wanted to do a cool angle, but it also gave us content for the next one, right? It gives us something to build off of and push to the next. And I would never ask anybody else to do it. As it turns out, I could have. There's lots of guys that would have volunteered to do it.
Oh God. And it's one of those things everybody wants to, to me, it's one of those things that, like you said, the guys like me worry about guys like you being involved or as a problem. It isn't. My only concern is, like, for instance, when you tell me you were in a battle royal and right away in my head, I'm like, oh Christ, you had to go over the top rope. That's where I get anxious because I've seen so many guys get hurt going over top. And so it's not a matter of like, Rob Kerr shouldn't be there. It's more a matter of, okay, guys, take it easy. Don't fucking throw this guy over the top rope because he's going to break his ankle.
No. And that was the first that they said, do you want in? And they said, yes. Yeah. And they said, okay, this is what happens. You go to the rope. This is what you do. This is what's going to happen. So they took really good care of it.
Yeah, because that's all.
And it's funny. I'll share a little funny story. So for JK, so those who didn't see the match, Chris Steele came out dressed as the Hitman Avenger and then revealed himself to Andy Anderson as Chris Steele. Well,
I'll actually post a link for this whole show in the bio.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So again, Michael Allen Richard Clark couldn't be there. So Andy Anderson was acting as a proxy and I had a proxy. So it was really the battle of the proxies. So we got a point in the match where we could send most of everybody else to the back, but the original three members of the CDC, myself, JK, and Brent. And Brent has been bugging me and talking, and he really wanted to take a punch. And JK, not as much, but would. So we walked through it and they get punched and they go down. And then I get kicked and then I get DDT'd on the title. And so that all happens. We go back. Everybody's happy. Like everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And then the next Monday, so the 7th, we're all at work. Well, everybody's coming in and talking to Gibby. Oh, Gibby, I thought you were hurt. Are you sore? Like you really got hit. Like you oh, you were amazing and everything. And all I heard was, oh, Gibby and JK, they were fantastic. They took the hit. And I'm like, yeah, but did anybody see the DDT? Anybody?
Yeah.
So all I heard was, those two took a punch. They were great. They looked. So one of our managers, I went in, he's saying like, yeah, JK, Gibby, like, I can't believe they're not hurt. Well, you know, Mark, did you see me? Yeah. I took the DDT. How did it look? Oh yeah, it was fine. So that was, you know, but that was hilarious. The best. That's the best part of it, right? Like I would, you know, honest to God, Duke, I think of, you know, so many times where you see the kind of, I call them interlopers and stuff like that. I got way too much respect for what you guys do. I got way too much respect for the business and everything like that. The only reason I do it is because I need the connectivity in the business, right? I need to be able to sell it and everything like that. No, I would not come to a PWA show with nothing on my hand going, throw me in a match. I want to do something. That's not how this works. No. And it's nice that you guys are generous enough with your time and your patience with it and everything and allow it to happen. I think it's really cool. But I don't take it for granted. Yeah, no, I think it's something that wrestling needs to do more, quite frankly, is that kind of cross promoting where, you know, we used to, when I was first breaking in with Stampede, we'd wrestle shows every year at St. Francis High School. Yeah. And there was always a teacher involved at some point. You know, there was always a teacher that would get in, and usually the teacher would actually be in the match, come in, you know, throw a couple clotheslines, make the pin, and that'd be the end of it, and send the kids back to school happy. And so to me, it's, you know, it serves a purpose. Like I was in a play once and so I know exactly what you're feeling like. Cause I did 2 plays and the theater people were so nice. And I was like, I felt like such an asshole because I just stepped into their world, right? Like it was. You're right. That's the best way to describe it. It's not your world. Now, having said that, stay tuned because there might be something coming down the pipe here in the next couple of weeks. So. All right, man. I will be in touch. Now, what's your social media for the people? You know what? The only thing you can find me on is Twitter is CSEC Kerr. Okay. And that's where I am. You know, I'm the easiest guy to find. I'm at all Hitman games and Roughnecks games and stuff like that. But no, I'm one of the few people in the world without a Facebook account. I have Instagram and have never done anything with it. Instagram, I'll say this right now to all you guys at Instagram that are watching. I know you are. Instagram sucks. I hate Instagram. It's the TikTok. I mean, the TikTok. Like now, I'm really that TikTok, like that Twitter, that Instagram. Costco, the Walmart. I wish I could go back 10 years and roll myself back and just get into it, but I'm afraid I'm just landlocked on Twitter right now. I think most of us just don't care anymore. You get to a point. On that note, man, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. This is amazing. I love it. If you're willing, man, let's do this again because I'd love to. Anytime. I mean, we covered so much ground, and like I say, you do not suck. I listen. I've listened to podcasts before. I do want to tip my hat to Kurt Sorokin because I listened to the podcast obviously leading up to the event, and you guys were very kind, and I appreciated that. Much, it meant a lot. But I just, if somebody's watching, what I'm hoping is this one maybe gets you a few people from outside the realm. If you haven't gone and watched independent wrestling, find a show, go. We're not saying it for a fact. I think we had some people on that show, Duke, on March 5th that people are going to be seeing on TV real soon, like on the big programs real soon. I have no problem telling you that there's a couple guys on the PWA roster right now that you're definitely watching Stars of the Future. There's no question in my mind. Again, Rob, thank you so much again. And, let's do this again soon. Anytime. Thank you. Take care, brother. You bet, brother.
You suck.